On Christmas Eve, Dante Moretti, once the most feared name in the city, stands on a modest porch holding a wrapped gift. No bodyguards, no armor, just guilt and hope. His ex-wife opens the door, shock freezing her features. Before either can speak, a 7-year-old boy with dark curls races past, then stops. The child looks up. Dante's own eyes stare back at him, unmistakable, impossible, devastating. The air turns to glass. 7 years ago, their marriage shattered. Tonight, Dante discovers he has a son. If you want to see how one knock changes everything, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Well, the snow fell soft and steady over Bennett Heights, transforming the working-class neighborhood into something almost magical. Christmas lights blinked from rooftops and windows, competing with each other in cheerful disorder, reds and greens and blues tangling together like happy confusion. The houses here were small, close together, the kind of places where neighbors knew each other's business and nobody locked their doors until dark. Dante Moretti's car looked wrong here. The black Mercedes sedan rolled slowly down Maple Street, expensive and quiet, out of place among the pickup trucks and sensible sedans parked along the curb. Inside, Dante gripped the steering wheel harder than necessary, his knuckles white against the leather. He'd faced down rival families, stared down gun barrels, negotiated million-dollar deals without his pulse rising. But driving toward this particular house, number 43, the one with the slightly crooked wreath on the door, made his chest tight. He pulled to the curb 2 houses down and killed the engine. For a long moment, he just sat there, watching the house through the falling snow. Warm light glowed in the windows. Paper snowflakes, the kind kids made in school, were taped to the glass. A plastic reindeer stood in the small front yard, one antler listing to the side. Everything about the place screamed normal, safe, small. Everything he'd walked away from 7 years ago. Everything he'd lost. Dante reached for the gift on the passenger seat, wrapped in silver paper because the woman at the store said it was elegant, not because he knew what Claire liked anymore, and stepped out into the cold. His breath clouded in the December air. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. A dog barked. Life happening, ordinary and unburdened. He'd left his security detail back at the estate. No Marco hovering at his shoulder, no Angelo doing perimeter sweeps, no show of force. Just him, a gift, and 7 years of things he should have said differently. The walkway to number 43 was cracked concrete, recently shoveled but already dusting with fresh snow. Dante's shoes, Italian leather, more than most people's monthly rent, crunched softly. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the door, he noticed the welcome mat was new. It said joy in cursive letters. He almost turned around. Instead, he knocked. Movement inside. Footsteps, quick and light. The door opened, and there she was, Claire Hayes, his ex-wife. 7 years had changed her in small ways that added up to something fundamental. Her dark hair was shorter now, just past her shoulders instead of down her back. She wore jeans and a Christmas sweater with a cartoon reindeer on it, the kind of thing she never would have worn when they were married, when everything in her closet cost more than furniture. No makeup, no jewelry except a simple watch. Her face had lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but she looked lighter somehow, less burdened. She looked happy, until she saw him. The color drained from her face. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. Dante. Not a question, not a greeting, just his name, spoken like a word she'd tried to forget. Claire. His voice came out rougher than intended. I know I should have called. I was in the area, and it's Christmas, and I thought, you were in the area. She didn't blink. In Bennett Heights. You. Fair point. Bennett Heights was 40 minutes from his estate, a world away from the circles he moved in. No reason for Dante Moretti to ever be in this neighborhood unless he was coming here specifically. I brought you something. He held up the silver package like an offering. I don't want to intrude. I just wanted to give you this, to say, a blur of motion behind her, small, fast, laughing. A child. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, burst past Claire's legs into the doorway, chasing what looked like a toy car. He wore pajamas covered in snowmen and had dark curls that stuck up in every direction. He was mid-laugh, mid-chase, completely absorbed in whatever game he was playing. Then he looked up. The toy car fell from his hand, bouncing down the steps. Dante's world tilted sideways. The boy had his eyes. Not similar eyes, not kind of like eyes. His exact eyes, the same unusual shade of gray-green, the same shape, the same intensity even in a child's face. The resemblance was so stark, so immediate, it hit like a physical blow. The boy stared at him. Dante stared back. The air between them crystallized, fragile as glass. Eli. Claire's voice cut through the moment, sharp with something Dante couldn't name. Inside. Now. The boy, Eli, looked from Dante to his mother and back again, his small face scrunched up in confusion. Who's the scary guy? Inside. Claire's tone left no room for argument. Go find Grandma. Eli hesitated, clearly not used to his mother using that voice, then scooped up his toy car and disappeared into the house. His footsteps pounded down what sounded like a hallway, followed by a distant woman's voice asking what was wrong. Claire stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind her. She crossed her arms, not against the cold, but against him. You need to leave. Her voice shook, not with fear, with something bigger, more complicated. Right now, Dante. You need to get in your car and leave. Claire, no. She shook her head, firm. No. You don't get to show up here. You don't get to... She stopped, pressing her lips together hard. Just go. Dante's mind was racing, calculating, trying to make the math work. 7 years since the divorce, the boy looked 6, maybe 7, which meant... How old is he? That's none of your business. How old, Claire? Her jaw set. 7. He turned 7 in August. The numbers lined up perfectly. Too perfectly. Dante's heart hammered against his ribs. Is he... Stop! Claire held up a hand. Stop talking. Stop thinking whatever you're thinking. Just stop. Does he have my... I said stop! Her voice cracked, loud enough that a neighbor's porch light flicked on across the street. Claire noticed, lowered her voice to something fierce and controlled. You have no right to ask me anything. No right to be here. We had papers, Dante. Legal papers. A divorce. An ending. You don't get to... I need to know if that boy is my son. The words hung in the cold air between them. Claire's expression did something complicated. Anger and pain and exhaustion all mixing together. For a moment, Dante thought she might slap him, or cry, or both. Instead, she laughed. It was a broken sound, no humor in it at all. You want to know? Now? After 7 years, you suddenly care about... She stopped herself, breathing hard. You made your choice. We ended. Clean break. That's what you wanted. That's what you said when you signed the papers. That's not what I wanted. That's what you... Dante caught himself. They'd had this fight before, multiple times, in lawyers' offices and courtrooms. He'd thought he knew how it ended. He'd been wrong about a lot of things. Please, just tell me. Claire looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she saw there didn't seem to help. 1 minute. She pointed at the porch. You stay right there. Don't move. Don't knock again. Don't do anything except stand there and wait. She disappeared inside, pulling the door firmly shut behind her. Dante stood on the porch, snow collecting in his hair, and tried to breathe normally. Through the window to his left, he could see into the living room. It was small, maybe a quarter the size of his own. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, not professionally decorated, but covered in the kind of ornaments kids made, all glitter and popsicle sticks and construction paper. Stockings hung from a bookshelf that served as a makeshift mantel. A worn couch. Toys scattered on a rug. It looked nothing like the life he and Claire had shared, and it looked like everything he'd destroyed. The door opened again. Claire stepped out, pulling a cardigan around herself. She left the door cracked just an inch, close enough for privacy, open enough to hear if Eli called for her. You get 1 minute, she said. Then you leave and you don't come back here. Ever. Are we clear? Dante nodded. Eli is my son. Mine. I carried him. I birthed him. I've raised him every single day for 7 years. Alone. Without help. Without support. Without you. Each word landed like a hammer. I know what you're thinking, she continued. I can see it on your face. You're doing the math, looking at his eyes, adding up the timeline, so I'm going to save you the trouble. Yes. Eli is biologically yours. Happy? Does that answer your question? Dante couldn't speak, couldn't move. His son. He had a son. A 7-year-old son who'd just called him the scary guy and had no idea who he was. But Here's what you need to understand, Claire said, her voice dropping to something quiet and absolutely lethal. You have no legal claim, no parental rights. Your name isn't on the birth certificate. You signed away any potential claim when you walked out 7 years ago. I didn't know. Because I didn't tell you. She said it plainly, without apology. I found out 3 days after the divorce was finalized. 3 days, Dante. And I made a choice. I chose not to tell you. I chose to raise him away from your world, your violence, your... She gestured vaguely at him, at everything he represented. All of it. You should have... Should have what? Come crawling back? Handed you leverage? Given you another person to control? The word control hit harder than she probably intended. It was the word she'd used in their last real fight, the night before everything fell apart. You don't love me, Dante. You control me. There's a difference. He told her she was wrong. She told him to prove it by letting her make one decision, just one, without his input, his plans, his protection. He'd failed that test spectacularly. I never wanted to control you, he said quietly. I wanted to protect you. It was the same thing. To you, it was always the same thing. Claire's eyes were bright, but not with tears, with something fiercer. And I wouldn't let you do that to a child. Our child. So I chose differently. Dante looked through the window again. Somewhere in that small, warm house was a boy who carried his blood, his eyes, half his DNA. A boy who was a complete stranger. Can I meet him? The words came out rough. Really meet him. Not like this. No. Claire, you want to know him? You want to be part of his life? She stepped closer, looking up at him with an expression that was pure steel. Then you need to understand something first. I am his mother. I make the rules. I decide what's safe. I decide what's healthy. Not you, not your lawyers, not your money or your name or whatever power you think you have. Me. Only me. I understand. I don't think you do. She shook her head slowly. Because if you did, you wouldn't be here. You'd know that showing up unannounced on Christmas Eve after 7 years of silence is exactly the kind of thing that proves you haven't changed. You want what you want when you want it, and everyone else has to adjust. That's who you were. That's who you are. The accusation stung because it was accurate. He had driven here on impulse, hadn't called, hadn't considered how his presence might disrupt her life. He'd thought about closure, about making amends, about easing his own guilt. He hadn't thought about what she needed. You're right, he said. Claire blinked. What? You're right. I should have called. I should have asked permission. I shouldn't have just shown up. He took a breath. I'm sorry. For tonight and for everything else. All of it. She studied him, suspicious. That's it? No argument? No justification? What would be the point? Dante asked. You're right. I was wrong. I'm sorry. For a moment, Claire looked almost thrown. In all their years together, through all their fights, he'd rarely conceded ground that easily. She seemed to be waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the argument to continue. When it didn't, she sighed. Your minute is up. She started to turn back to the door. Please. She stopped. I'm not asking for rights, Dante said carefully, or custody, or anything legal. I'm just asking if you'll let me. I'd like to know him, however that looks, whatever rules you want. I'll follow them. I swear. Claire turned back slowly. Why? Because he's my son. You didn't care about that 5 minutes ago. You didn't even know he existed. But I do now. Dante met her eyes. And I can't unknow it. I can't stand on this porch, look at that boy, and walk away. I can't. Please don't ask me to. Something shifted in Claire's expression, not softening exactly, but considering. She looked back through the window at the warm glow of the living room, at the life she'd built. I need to think about it, she said finally. This isn't a decision I make on the spot, on my porch, in the snow. If, and that's a massive if, I agree to let you into Eli's life, it has to be done right, carefully, with rules, with boundaries. And the second you cross one, the second you do anything that puts him at risk or confuses him or hurts him, you're done, completely, forever. No second chances. I understand. Do you? She looked at him hard. Because this isn't a negotiation, Dante. This isn't a business deal where you get concessions if you push hard enough. This is my son's safety and happiness, and I will burn your entire world to ash if you threaten either one. Are we absolutely clear? He'd seen Claire angry before. He'd seen her hurt, frustrated, exhausted, but he'd never seen this absolute, unwavering fierceness. Motherhood had given her something she'd lacked when they were together. A line she would defend with everything she had. It made her terrifying. It also made her more beautiful than he remembered. "We're clear," he said. "Good." She reached for the door handle. "I'll call you, maybe, if I decide this isn't completely insane." "You don't have my number." "Please." She gave him a look. "I've had your number for 7 years. I just never used it." That landed with unexpected weight. She'd kept his number. All this time, through everything, she'd kept it. "Merry Christmas, Dante." Claire's voice was softer now, tired. "Go home." She slipped back inside and closed the door. Dante stood on the porch for another moment, staring at the spot where she'd been. Through the window, he saw Eli race through the living room again, chasing his toy car, completely unaware that his entire world had just tilted on its axis. Unaware that his father, a stranger, the scary guy, was standing 10 feet away, trying to figure out how to breathe normally again. Finally, Dante walked back to his car. He sat in the driver's seat, key in the ignition, not starting the engine. The silver package still sat on the passenger seat, forgotten and unopened. He had a son. A 7-year-old son named Eli who made paper snowflakes and wore snowman pajamas and had his eyes. A son who didn't know him. A son he'd missed 7 years of raising because his marriage had imploded, and he'd been too proud, too angry, too convinced he was right to consider there might be more to the story. Dante pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. He should call Marco, check on the business, confirm tomorrow's meetings. He should do something productive, something that moved his life forward in the direction it had been going for 7 years. Instead, he sat in his car outside a modest house in Bennett Heights and tried to remember what Claire had looked like pregnant. He couldn't, because he'd never seen it. She'd been carrying his child, growing his son, and he'd been, where? Signing divorce papers? Moving on. Convincing himself the split was for the best, that they'd been doomed from the start, that some people just weren't meant for the life he led? The driver's side window fogged with his breath. Dante wiped it clear with his sleeve and looked back at the house. The front door opened. Eli came out, no coat, just his snowman pajamas, and ran to the plastic reindeer in the yard. He tugged at its crooked antler, trying to straighten it. Claire appeared in the doorway immediately, calling him back inside. The boy ignored her, still wrestling with the decoration. Claire came down the steps, still no coat, grabbed Eli by the hand and pulled him toward the door. Eli protested, pointing at the reindeer. Claire said something Dante couldn't hear. Eli shook his head stubbornly. Dante found himself smiling. The kid had his mother's stubbornness. That was going to be trouble. Claire scooped Eli up. He was getting too big for it, all long legs and squirming resistance, and carried him inside. Just before she closed the door, she glanced toward the street. Their eyes met across the distance. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked at him for one long moment before disappearing inside with their son. Dante started the car and drove home through the snow, the wrapped gift untouched beside him, his mind full of gray-green eyes and paper snowflakes and the impossible question of what came next. The Moretti estate sprawled across 20 acres of prime real estate north of the city, all iron gates and security cameras and privacy hedges. The main house was a monument to success, the kind of place that appeared in architecture magazines under headlines like "Modern Luxury Meets Classical Elegance." It felt empty. Dante let himself in through the side entrance, avoiding Marco and the night shift who'd want to debrief him on where he'd been. The house was quiet, climate controlled to exactly 72 degrees, everything in its place. His office was in the east wing, dark wood, leather furniture, a desk that had belonged to his grandfather. Dante poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey he didn't want and stood at the window, looking out at nothing. His phone buzzed. Marco. "Everything okay? You've been off grid." Dante typed back, "Fine, taking tomorrow off." Marco. "Tomorrow is Christmas." Dante. Exactly. He put the phone face down on the desk and drank the whiskey. It was expensive, smooth, the kind of thing people collected and savored. Tasted like nothing. For 7 years, he'd convinced himself he was fine. The divorce was painful but necessary. Claire had wanted out. He'd let her go, clean break, move on, focus on business. The family operations had actually grown since the split, more legitimate now, less dependence on the old ways. He'd proven he could run things better alone, that he didn't need the distraction of a marriage that had been doomed from the start. He'd been lying to himself. The truth was simpler and uglier. He'd failed her, failed to see what she needed, failed to give her space to breathe, failed to understand the difference between protecting someone and controlling them. And she'd left, and he'd let her, convinced it was what she wanted. And she'd been pregnant, and he'd never known. Dante refilled his glass and pulled out his phone again. He scrolled through his contacts until he found her name. Claire Hayes, not Claire Moretti, because she'd gone back to her maiden name immediately after the divorce. The number was the same one he'd had for her since they'd started dating 13 years ago. He'd never deleted it. Never called it either, after the papers were signed. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he even say? Sorry for showing up unannounced. Sorry for missing 7 years. Sorry for being exactly who you said I was. He put the phone down. Outside the window, snow continued to fall over the manicured grounds, covering everything in clean white silence. Somewhere across the city, in a small house in Bennett Heights, Claire was probably putting Eli to bed. Reading him a story maybe, or singing a song, or doing whatever mothers did on Christmas Eve. Normal things, small things. Things Dante had no part in. Things he wanted to be part of so desperately it physically hurt. He'd built an empire, controlled territory, commanded respect from men who feared nothing, and none of it, not one single piece of it, mattered as much as the fact that he had a son who'd called him the scary guy and had no idea they were connected. Dante's phone lit up. A text. From Claire. His heart stopped. The message was short. Eli asked who you were. I told him you were someone I used to know. He asked if you were nice. I said I wasn't sure anymore. Thought you should know. Dante stared at the screen. After a moment, he typed back, "Thank you for telling me." The 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. They disappeared, reappeared, disappeared again. Finally, "Don't make me regret this." Regret what? Dante wondered. Telling him about the conversation? Not slamming the door in his face? Keeping his number all these years? He didn't ask, just wrote, "I won't." No response came. Dante sat at his desk, phone in hand, whiskey forgotten, and tried to imagine what Eli's voice sounded like when he wasn't calling someone scary. Tried to picture what bedtime looked like in that small house. Tried to calculate how many bedtimes he'd already missed. 2,555, give or take. The number was staggering. His phone buzzed again. Marco. "Boss, we've got a situation at the port. Needs your call." Dante looked at the message for a long time. A year ago, 6 months ago, even yesterday, he would have responded immediately. Business first. Always business first. Tonight he typed, "Handle it. I'm unavailable." Marco. "Unavailable?" Dante. "I'll explain later. Trust me." Another pause, then, "Okay. Merry Christmas, boss. Merry Christmas." Dante looked around his empty office, his empty house, his carefully controlled empire of expensive nothing. For the first time in 7 years, he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd lost. And what he might, if Claire allowed it, if he didn't screw it up, if the universe gave him one more chance he absolutely didn't deserve, have the opportunity to find again. Not the marriage. That ship had sailed and sunk. But maybe, possibly, if he was very careful and very patient and very different from who he used to be, he could know his son. He could be Eli's father. Not the scary guy. Not a stranger on the porch. A father. Dante turned off his office lights and headed upstairs to his bedroom, a massive space with a king bed he slept in alone, closets full of clothes that cost more than most people's cars, a view of grounds he never walked on. He didn't sleep. Instead, he lay in the dark and thought about gray-green eyes and paper snowflakes and a crooked reindeer in a modest yard, and wondered if wanting something desperately enough could possibly be sufficient to make up for 7 years of absence. Probably not. But he was going to try anyway, because somewhere in Bennett Heights, in a small house strung with warm lights, his son was sleeping under a roof Dante had never seen, dreaming dreams Dante knew nothing about, living a life Dante had no part in. Yet. That last word, yet, held more hope than Dante had allowed himself to feel in years. It also terrified him completely, because hoping meant risking, and risking meant the possibility of losing. And Dante had already lost so much he wasn't sure he could survive losing anything more. But as he lay in the dark, phone on the nightstand, waiting for a call or text that might never come, Dante made himself a promise. If Claire gave him a chance, even the smallest, most conditional, most controlled chance, he would take it. And this time, he wouldn't screw it up. This time, he'd learn the difference between protection and possession. This time, he'd show up not as the man who needed to control everything, but as the man willing to follow someone else's rules for something that mattered more than power. This time, he'd choose differently. Outside, Christmas Eve turned slowly into Christmas morning, and Dante Moretti, feared, respected, untouchable, lay awake in his empty mansion and hoped desperately for a phone call from his ex-wife about a son he'd only just learned existed. It was the most powerless he'd felt in his entire life. It was also the most human. Dawn came gray and cold, bleeding pale light through the bedroom windows. Dante hadn't slept, not really. He drifted in and out of something restless and thin, jerking awake every time his phone vibrated with work messages he ignored. By 6 a.m., he gave up pretending and went downstairs to the kitchen. The house staff had Christmas off. His insistence, years ago, after Claire had told him it was cruel to make people work holidays just so he wouldn't have to make his own coffee. The kitchen gleamed, unused and spotless. Dante stood at the counter and stared at the espresso machine like it was a puzzle he'd forgotten how to solve. His phone buzzed. Not Claire. Angelo. "Merry Christmas, boss. Port situation handled. Marco briefed me. All quiet." Dante typed back a quick thanks and poured himself coffee that tasted like burnt cardness. He took it to the living room, a space decorated by professionals in neutrals and expensive textures. Nothing personal anywhere except a single photo on the mantel. Him and Claire on their wedding day, 7 years ago. He'd been 26, stupidly confident, convinced he could have everything. She'd been 24, luminous in white silk, smiling like she believed in forever. He should take the photo down. He never had. The coffee went cold in his hands as he stood there, staring at two people who didn't exist anymore, trying to figure out what version of himself he needed to become to deserve a second chance he absolutely hadn't earned. His phone rang. Dante's heart lurched. He grabbed it so fast he nearly dropped it. Not Claire. His mother. He answered anyway. "Ma." "Dante, baby, Merry Christmas." Rosa Moretti's voice came through warm and heavy with the accent she'd never quite lost despite 40 years in America. "You're coming for dinner, yes? I made the lasagna, the good one with the bechamel you like." "I don't know if I can make it." Silence. Then, carefully, "You sick?" "No, just something came up." "On Christmas?" His mother's tone sharpened. "What came up on Christmas that's more important than family?" "Family." The word lodged in his chest. Dante closed his eyes. "I saw Claire last night." Another pause. Longer this time. His mother had loved Claire, had been devastated by the divorce, had asked him repeatedly what he'd done to drive away such a good woman. Dante had never given her a straight answer because he hadn't had one that didn't make him look like exactly the kind of man he'd been. "You saw her," Rosa repeated slowly. "And?" "And I found out." His voice caught. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I have a son, Ma. Claire has a son. Our son. He's 7. The silence stretched so long Dante checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Ma?" 7 years old. His mother's voice had gone very quiet. "You have a 7-year-old son, and you're just now finding out?" "She didn't tell me. She found out after the divorce, and she made a choice not to involve me." "And you're angry about this?" Dante opened his mouth to say yes, then stopped. Was he angry? He'd been shocked, confused, desperate. But angry? At Claire for protecting their child from the chaos of his world? "No," he said finally. "I'm not angry." "Good." His mother's tone softened slightly. "Because if you were, I'd drive over there right now and knock sense into you myself." She did what she thought was right for her baby. That's what mothers do. "I know." "What's his name?" "Eli." He heard his mother inhale sharply. "Elijah. That's a strong name, a good name." Another pause. "Have you held him?" The question gutted him. "No, he doesn't know who I am. He called me the scary guy." "Well, you can be scary," Rosa said it matter-of-factly. "You look like your father when you're serious. He could scare the paint off walls. Ma, so what are you going to do about it? Dante looked at the cold coffee in his hand, at the wedding photo on the mantel, at his empty mansion full of expensive everything and meaningful nothing. I don't know. Claire said she'd think about letting me meet him properly, with rules, boundaries, if she calls. If? His mother made a dismissive sound. She'll call. She's a good woman, and good women want their children to know their fathers, even fathers who are occasionally stupid and pig-headed. Thanks, Ma. You come to dinner. Bring the lasagna to Claire tomorrow. Show up like a person, not like... She waved a hand he couldn't see, but could absolutely picture. Not like a boss, like a man who wants to know his son. Understand? I understand. Good. I love you. Don't mess this up. She hung up before he could respond. Dante set his phone down and looked around his living room. His mother was right. Everything here screamed power and control and distance. Everything here was designed to intimidate, to impress, to keep people at arm's length. Everything here was exactly wrong for what he needed to do. He picked up his phone again and opened a new browser window. Typed, how to talk to a 7-year-old boy. The search results were overwhelming. Parenting blogs, psychology articles, forums full of advice. Dante scrolled through them, clicking on headlines that seemed relevant. Age-appropriate conversations. Building trust with your child. What kids need from their fathers. He read for an hour, absorbing information like he was studying for the most important negotiation of his life. Because he was. At 8:30, his phone buzzed with a text. Claire, are you awake? Dante's pulse spiked. He typed back immediately. Yes. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Claire, my mother invited you for Christmas dinner. She doesn't know who you are. I told her you were an old friend. She insists we have too much food and it's a sin to waste. Her words, not mine. Dante read the message 3 times, trying to decode it. Was this Claire extending an olive branch? Or her mother being hospitable? Or a test? Probably a test. He typed, I don't want to intrude on your family Christmas. Claire, too late. You already did that last night. Fair point. Claire, 2 p.m. Bring nothing. Seriously, Dante, don't show up with expensive wine or fancy desserts or whatever you think impresses people. Just come. And wear normal clothes. If you show up in a 3-piece suit, I'm slamming the door in your face. Dante looked down at his pajamas. Silk, monogrammed, definitely not normal. He typed, I can do normal. Claire, we'll see. No other messages followed. Dante sat with the phone in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. She'd invited him. Or her mother had, and Claire hadn't vetoed it. Either way, he had a second chance arriving in less than 6 hours. He needed normal clothes. Dante went upstairs to his walk-in closet and stared at rows of tailored suits, designer shirts, handmade shoes. Nothing here qualified as normal. Even his casual wear, cashmere sweaters, imported jeans, cost more than most people spent on a month of groceries. He grabbed his keys and headed out. The shopping district was mostly closed for Christmas, but a big box department store near the highway had holiday hours. Dante parked his Mercedes in the far corner of the lot, next to pickup trucks and sedans plastered with family stickers. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over aisles of merchandise. Christmas music played from overhead speakers. A tired-looking employee in a red vest pointed him toward the men's section. Dante bought jeans, regular Levi's, nothing designer, a plain blue sweater, normal brown boots that looked broken in even though they weren't. He paid cash, declined the gift receipt, and changed in the car. Looking at himself in the rearview mirror felt strange. He looked younger somehow, less polished, more like the guy he'd been before the money, before the empire, before everything got complicated. More like someone who might belong in a small house in Bennett Heights. He drove home, showered, tried to eat breakfast, and couldn't. Read more parenting articles, paced, checked his phone every 30 seconds, even though Claire had said 2 p.m. and it was barely noon. At 1:45, he got in the car and drove to Bennett Heights. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, smaller, more worn, but cheerful in a way his estate never managed. Kids rode new bikes on the sidewalks, dragging tinsel from handlebars. Neighbors called greetings to each other from porches. Someone had built a snowman in their yard, complete with a carrot nose and stick arms. Normal life. Real life. The kind of life Claire had chosen. Dante parked in front of number 43 and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. Through the window, he could see movement inside, shadows passing, voices, faint and indistinct. Somewhere in there was his son. He checked his reflection one more time, the regular jeans, the plain sweater, the face that still looked too serious, too sharp, too much like the kind of man Eli had called scary. At exactly 2 p.m., he got out and walked to the front door. Before he could knock, it swung open. Claire stood there, looking him up and down with an expression he couldn't quite read. She wore dark jeans and a green sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup again, no jewelry. Just her, real and present, and somehow more beautiful than any version he remembered. "You're on time," she said. "You told me 2 p.m. I told you 2 p.m. to see if you'd show up early and try to control the situation." She studied him. "But you didn't." "I'm trying to follow the rules." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion, or the faintest edge of approval. "Come in. Shoes off at the door. My mother's rules, not mine." Dante stepped inside, immediately engulfed by warmth and noise and the smell of cooking food. The house was even smaller than it had looked from outside. A narrow hallway opened into a living room that flowed directly into a tiny kitchen. Every surface was covered with something. Decorations, dishes, mail, toys, life happening in visible layers. "Mom, he's here!" Claire called toward the kitchen. An older woman appeared, wiping her hands on an apron. She had Claire's dark eyes and the kind of face that smiled even in repose. "You must be Dante. Claire said you were an old friend. Come in, come in. I'm Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie." She pulled him into a hug before he could react, squeezing tight like they'd known each other for years. "Any friend of Claire's is family here. You hungry?" "Of course you're hungry. Sit, sit." "Mom, let the man breathe," Claire said, but she was almost smiling. Dante let himself be guided toward the kitchen table, a small wooden thing with mismatched chairs, one of them held together with duct tape. The whole house smelled incredible, like garlic and herbs and something baking. His stomach growled despite his nerves. "Where's Eli?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "In his room, playing with his new stuff." "Santa was good to him this year." Maggie winked at Claire, who rolled her eyes. "I'll go get him," Claire said. She pointed at Dante. "You stay here. Talk to my mother. Be normal." She disappeared down the hallway. Dante sat at the table, acutely aware of Maggie watching him with cheerful curiosity. "So," Maggie said, stirring something on the stove, "how do you know my Claire?" We were friends. A long time ago." "Long time, huh? She doesn't talk about the old days much." Maggie glanced at him. "You know she was married?" "I know. Terrible business, that divorce. Broke her heart. She won't say so, but I'm her mother. I know." She shook her head. "The man was all wrong for her, too controlling, too wrapped up in his business. Treated her like a possession instead of a partner." Dante's throat went tight. "Did she tell you that?" "Didn't have to. I saw it. The way he'd call her 20 times a day. The way she had to ask permission for everything. The way she started getting smaller and smaller, like she was disappearing inside her own life." Maggie turned to look at him directly. "A woman like Claire needs room to breathe. That man never understood that. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he'd been trying to protect her, that the constant calls and check-ins came from caring, not controlling. But sitting in this small kitchen, listening to the mother of the woman he'd lost describe exactly how he'd failed, Dante couldn't find words that didn't sound like excuses. "I'm glad she got away," Maggie continued. "Glad she found herself again. Look at her now, raising Eli on her own, working her tail off, building a real life. That's strength. That's what happens when you let people be who they are instead of who you want them to be." "You're right," Dante said quietly. Maggie paused mid-stir. "What's that?" "You're right, about all of it. You should have done better." Maggie studied him with new intensity, her easy cheerfulness sharpening into something more assessing. Before she could respond, footsteps thundered down the hall. Eli burst into the kitchen, clutching some kind of action figure. He skidded to a stop when he saw Dante. "You're the scary guy from last night." "Eli." Claire appeared behind him, her hand on his shoulder. "Remember what we talked about? Manners." Eli looked up at his mother, then back at Dante. "Sorry, you're the guy from last night who Mom says I should be nice to, even though you look like taxes." Maggie laughed. "Like taxes? Where do you get this stuff?" What do taxes look like? Dante asked, genuinely curious. Eli scrunched up his face, thinking hard. Serious and expensive, and like they're about to take away your fun. Claire covered her mouth, but not fast enough to hide her smile. Eli, this is Dante. He's someone I used to know. He's joining us for dinner. Are you staying? Eli asked Dante directly. If that's okay with you. Eli considered this with the gravity of someone weighing a very important decision. Can you help me fix my reindeer? The antler's still broken. Eli, you don't ask guests to do chores, Claire started. It's not a chore if it's broken, Eli argued. It's fixing. That's different. Dante looked at Claire, asking permission without words. She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. I can help, Dante said. Okay, come on. Eli grabbed his hand, small fingers wrapping around Dante's with complete trust, and tugged him toward the front door. It's in the yard. The wind keeps knocking it crooked. Claire followed them out, arms crossed against the cold. Dante knelt in the snow next to the plastic reindeer while Eli explained the problem with intense seriousness. See, this part goes in here, but it won't stay. I tried tape, but Grandma said tape doesn't work on plastic when it's cold, so we need a different solution. A different solution, Dante repeated. He examined the antler, cheap plastic, the attachment point worn down from years of use. We need something to wedge in here, to make it tight again. Like what? Dante looked around the yard. A small branch had fallen from the tree near the fence. He retrieved it, broke off a piece, and wedged it into the attachment point before sliding the antler back on. It held. Eli's face lit up. You fixed it! We fixed it, Dante corrected. You diagnosed the problem. That's the hard part. What's diagnosed? Figured out what was wrong. Oh. Eli tested the antler, pushing it gently. It stayed put. We make a good team. The words hit Dante harder than they should have. We make a good team. This kid, his kid, had no idea what those words meant, no concept of the blood they shared. He was just a 7-year-old happy about a fixed decoration. Yeah, Dante managed. We do. They headed back inside. Maggie had set the table, mismatched plates, faded cloth napkins, a centerpiece made of pine cones and candles. It looked nothing like the formal dining his mother would be setting up across town, all matching china and silver and pristine white tablecloths. It looked better. They sat down, Maggie at the head, Claire to her right, Eli between Claire and Dante. The proximity was electric. Dante could feel the warmth of his son beside him, could count the freckles on Eli's nose, could see the exact shape of his own eyes in a smaller face. Maggie brought out food, ham, roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes, rolls that steamed when broken open. Simple food, well-made, served family style. Everyone passed dishes, filled plates, talked over each other in the easy chaos of people who ate together regularly. Dante had forgotten what this felt like. Meals in his house were either business, controlled, strategic, food as fuel, or solitary. This was neither. This was messy and warm and real. So Dante, Maggie said, passing him the potatoes. What do you do for work? Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Dante caught her eye, saw the warning there. Don't tell my mother you're a crime boss. Even a retired one. I'm in logistics, Dante said. It was technically true. Supply chain management. Oh, that sounds complicated. It can be, but it's mostly about making sure things get where they're supposed to go. Like Santa, Eli said seriously. He's in logistics too, getting presents to everyone in one night. That's supply chain. Dante smiled despite himself. Exactly like that. The meal continued, conversation flowing around him. Maggie asked about his family. He told her about his mother, her lasagna, the tradition of big Christmas dinners. Eli asked if he could try lasagna sometime. Claire said maybe. Dante caught the word maybe and held on to it like a lifeline. Maybe meant not no. Maybe meant possibility. After dinner, Eli dragged Dante to the living room to show him his presents, a telescope, some books, the action figure he'd been carrying earlier. Dante listened to explanations about constellations and superheroes, nodding in the right places, asking questions that made Eli's face light up. Claire watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. It's getting late, she said finally. Eli, time to start cleaning up. But I didn't show him my room yet. Another time. You said maybe. Eli looked at his mother with devastating accuracy. That's what you always say when you mean no but don't want to say it. Claire's mouth opened, closed. That's not... That's not always what I mean. So I can show him my room? Eli, please? Just for 5 minutes? Claire looked at Dante, something complicated moving behind her eyes. 5 minutes, then it's actually time to go. Eli grabbed Dante's hand again and pulled him down the hallway. His room was small, barely big enough for a twin bed, a bookshelf, and a toy box. Drawings covered the walls, mostly space-themed, rockets and planets and stars. A glow-in-the-dark solar system hung from the ceiling. I want to be an astronaut, Eli announced, or a dinosaur scientist. I haven't decided yet. Those are both good choices. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Dante thought about it. He'd grown up in the family business, groomed from childhood to take over operations, taught young that wanting something outside the organization was dangerous. He'd never really had a choice. I wanted to fly planes, he said. It was true. At 7, before he'd understood what his last name meant, he'd dreamed about being a pilot. That's cool. Did you do it? No, I ended up doing something else. Do you like your job? The question was innocent, but it landed with weight. Did he like his job? The power, the control, the constant maneuvering? He was good at it. He'd built something significant. But did he like it? It's complicated, Dante said. That means no. Eli flopped onto his bed. My mom says that too. When something's complicated, it's usually not fun. Out of the mouths of babes, Claire appeared in the doorway. 5 minutes is up. Eli sighed dramatically but didn't argue. Dante stood, suddenly aware of how much he didn't want to leave. Didn't want to walk out of this small, warm house back to his empty mansion. Thanks for dinner, he said to Claire. Thank my mother. It was her idea. Still, thank you for letting me stay. Claire nodded, then looked at Eli. Say goodbye to Dante? Goodbye, Dante. Eli waved from his bed. Thanks for fixing the reindeer. Any time. Dante followed Claire back to the front door. Maggie was in the kitchen, humming while she washed dishes. Claire handed Dante his coat. That wasn't terrible, she said quietly. That's a ringing endorsement. It's more than I expected to give you. She crossed her arms. You were good with him, patient. You didn't try too hard. I was terrified the whole time. Claire's expression softened slightly. Good. You should be. This is terrifying. They stood in the small entryway, too close in the narrow space. Dante could smell her shampoo, something simple, not the expensive stuff she'd used when they were married. Everything about her was different now, simpler, more herself. Can I see him again? He asked. I don't know. Claire Bae? I mean it, Dante. I don't know. It's a lot. For me, for Eli, for everyone. I need to think about what's best for him, and I'm not sure yet what that is. What can I do to prove I'm serious about this? She looked at him for a long moment. Be consistent. That's what kids need. Not big gestures, not expensive presents. Just showing up when you say you will, being who you say you are, proving you're steady. I can do that. Maybe. She opened the door. Cold air rushed in. We'll see. Dante stepped onto the porch. Behind him, he heard Eli call out something to Maggie, heard laughter, heard the sounds of a life continuing without him. Merry Christmas, Claire. Merry Christmas, Dante. She closed the door. Dante stood there for a moment, then walked to his car. As he pulled away from the curb, he looked back. Through the window, he could see them, Claire, Eli, and Maggie in the living room. A family, complete without him. But maybe, with room for one more if he could prove he deserved it. The drive back to his estate felt longer than it had coming. Dante's mind replayed the afternoon on loop, Eli's hand in his. The fixed reindeer, the dinner table conversation. The word maybe, carrying more hope than any contract he'd ever signed. He'd spent 7 years building walls, controlling variables, eliminating risks. And in 3 hours at a modest house in Bennett Heights, a 7-year-old kid with his eyes had dismantled every defense he had. Dante pulled into his driveway, looked at his empty mansion, and made a decision. He picked up his phone and called his mother. How was Claire? Rosa asked immediately. She has a nice life, Ma. Simple, real, everything I'm not. So change. It's not that easy. Yes, it is. You decide to be different, then you do the work. Stop making excuses. Dante leaned back in his seat. He asked me if I liked my job. What did you tell him? That it's complicated. And he said that means no. His mother laughed. Smart kid. He gets that from Claire. He wants to be an astronaut or a paleontologist. He hasn't decided. And you're going to support whatever he chooses. It wasn't a question. Dante closed his eyes. If she lets me be part of his life, yeah, I will. She'll let you. But Dante, listen to me. You can't do this halfway. You can't be his father when it's convenient and disappear when it's hard. Kids need steady. They need present. Can you do that? Could he? Being present meant showing up even when work called, meant choosing different, meant becoming someone he'd never been. I'm going to try, he said. Good. Now come get your lasagna. You're bringing it to them tomorrow. Ma, I can't just show up again. Yes, you can. That's what steady looks like. You show up again and again until they believe you mean it. She hung up. Dante sat in his car in front of his house and looked at the life he'd built. The gates, the security, the isolation. All of it designed to keep people out, to maintain control, to protect the empire. None of it designed for a 7-year-old who wanted to show him drawings of planets and needed someone to fix a plastic reindeer. Something had to change. He had to change. And for the first time in 7 years, Dante Moretti wanted something more than he wanted control. He wanted to be Eli's father, not the scary guy, not a stranger bearing expensive gifts, just dad. The word felt impossible and essential all at once. Dante got out of the car, went inside his empty house, and started planning how to prove he could be steady. Because maybe, that word again, full of fragile hope, wasn't good enough. He needed to turn maybe into yes. And that started tomorrow, with lasagna and another chance he absolutely didn't deserve, but would fight like hell to earn. The next morning arrived cold and bright, sunlight cutting sharp angles through Dante's bedroom windows. He'd slept better than expected, still not great, but better, and woke with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. His mother's lasagna sat in a carrier on his kitchen counter, still warm from her oven, wrapped carefully in foil with handwritten instructions taped to the top. Bake at 350 for 30 minutes. Tell Claire I used the good ricotta. Dante stared at the casserole dish like it was a puzzle. In his world, problems got solved with money, leverage, carefully applied pressure. But this, showing up with his mother's cooking, hoping for another few hours in that small house, required something different, something he'd never been good at. Faith that good intentions might be enough. He texted Claire at 9 a.m. My mother made lasagna. She insists I bring it over. Can I drop it off? The response took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Dante checking his phone every 30 seconds, second-guessing the message, wondering if he'd pushed too hard too fast. Finally, Eli's been asking about you since he woke up. You can come by at 11. Don't expect to stay long. Dante read the message 3 times. Eli had been asking about him. That single detail mattered more than it should, hit harder than any business victory. He typed back, I'll be there at 11. Thank you. He spent the next hour preparing like he was going into negotiation. Shower, shave, the same normal clothes from yesterday. Jeans and a sweater that didn't scream money. He caught himself reaching for cologne, then stopped. Too much. Keep it simple. Keep it real. At exactly 11 a.m., he pulled up to the house on Maple Street. The crooked reindeer stood proud in the yard, its antlers straight and steady. The sight made something warm settle in Dante's chest. Such a small thing. Such a simple fix. But it mattered. Claire opened the door before he could knock. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked tired but alert, watching him with careful eyes. You're on time again. You said 11. I said 11 to see if you'd show up at 10:30. She held the door open wider. But you didn't. I'm learning. Something almost like a smile touched her lips. We'll see. Dante followed her inside, lasagna carrier in hand. The house felt different in morning light, smaller somehow, but cozier. Maggie was gone, back to her own place according to Claire. Eli sat at the kitchen table with a coloring book, tongue poking out in concentration as he filled in what looked like a T-Rex. He looked up when Dante entered. You came back. I brought food. My mom made lasagna. Eli's eyes went wide. Is it good? It's the best, Dante said honestly. She's been making it for 40 years. She's got it down to a science. What's a science? It means she's practiced so much she knows exactly how to make it perfect every time. Claire took the carrier from him and set it on the counter. She read her mother-in-law's note, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or the recognition that Rosa Moretti was getting involved, whether Claire wanted her to or not. "Your mom used to make this for Sunday dinners," Claire said quietly. "I remember. She asked about you, wanted to know how you were doing." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you built a good life, that you seem happy." Claire looked at him for a long moment, trying to determine if he meant it or if this was strategy. Dante held her gaze, letting her see whatever she needed to see. "Sit," she said finally. "Coffee? Please?" She poured 2 cups while Eli returned to his coloring. Dante sat at the table, close enough to see his son's artwork, but not crowding. The T-Rex was green with purple spots, absolutely nothing like any dinosaur that had ever existed. "That's a good dinosaur," Dante said. "It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king of the dinosaurs." Eli didn't look up from his work. They had tiny arms but huge teeth, like 60 teeth, all sharp. "That's a lot of teeth." "Yeah, for eating other dinosaurs. They were apex predators. That means nothing could eat them because they were at the top." Dante glanced at Claire, who was watching this exchange with an expression he couldn't quite read. She set a coffee cup in front of him, black, no sugar, exactly how he'd always taken it. She remembered. "Eli's on a dinosaur kick this month," she said. "Last month it was space. The month before that, ancient Egypt." "I like learning about things that are big and important," Eli explained seriously. "Dinosaurs are both." "Can't argue with that logic." They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a while. Eli colored. Claire drank her coffee. Dante tried not to stare at his son's profile, at the way his brow furrowed in concentration, at the precise angle of his jaw that came straight from the Moretti side of the family tree. "Can I ask you something?" Eli said suddenly, not looking up from his coloring. "Sure." "Why do you look so serious all the time, like you're thinking about taxes?" Claire choked on her coffee. "Eli, that's not... You can't just ask people why they look serious." "Why not? You tell me I should ask questions when I'm curious." "I meant about homework or dinosaurs, not about people's faces." Eli looked genuinely confused. "But faces are interesting. Everybody's face tells you something. Grandma says that." Dante found himself smiling despite the awkwardness. "Your grandma's right. And to answer your question, I think I look serious because I spend a lot of time thinking about complicated things. But I'm working on it." "What kind of complicated things?" "How to be a father, how to make up for 7 years, how to deserve the chance I'm being given." "Work stuff mostly," Dante said. "But lately I've been thinking about other things too. More important things." "Like what?" "Like how to fix broken reindeer, and what makes a good dinosaur, and whether I like my job or if it's just complicated." Eli considered this with the seriousness of a much older person. "You should do what makes you happy. That's what Mom tells me. She says life's too short to do stuff you don't like if you have a choice." Claire's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. She was staring at her son like he'd just revealed classified information. "Your mom's very smart," Dante said. "I know, she knows everything, except how to fix the sink. We have to call Mr. Patterson for that." "What's wrong with your sink?" "It drips. Mom puts a bowl under it at night so it doesn't make noise, but it still drips." Eli finally looked up from his dinosaur. "Can you fix sinks?" "Eli, don't..." Claire started. "I can try," Dante said, "if your mom wants me to." Claire looked at him like he'd just suggested something dangerous. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but if it needs fixing and I can help, why not?" "Because you're not..." She stopped herself, glancing at Eli. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity, it's just helping." Dante kept his voice even, non-confrontational. "No strings, no expectations, just fixing something that's broken." The double meaning hung in the air between them. Claire's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she stood and walked to the sink, pointing at the faucet. "It's been dripping for 3 weeks. The landlord keeps saying he'll send someone, but he never does." Dante joined her, examining the faucet. Old chrome, worn washers, nothing complicated. "You have tools?" "Under the sink, basic stuff." He found a toolbox, small, somewhat rusty, clearly purchased at a discount store. Inside were a few screwdrivers, a wrench, some duct tape. Dante knelt and got to work, aware of Eli appearing at his shoulder almost immediately. "What are you doing?" "Checking to see what's causing the drip. Usually it's the washer, this little rubber piece that makes a seal. When it wears out, Water gets through. Can I help? Dante glanced at Claire, asking permission. She hesitated, then nodded. Hand me that wrench, Dante said. The thing that looks like a metal mouth. Eli retrieved it carefully, holding it like it was precious. This one? Perfect. Now watch. I'm going to loosen this nut here. See how it's holding the faucet together? Once it's loose, I can take this apart and see what needs replacing. He worked slowly, explaining each step. Eli absorbed every word, asking questions that showed he was actually listening. Claire watched from the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The washer was shot, as Dante suspected. He pulled it out and held it up to show Eli. This is the problem. See how it's cracked and torn? It can't make a good seal anymore. Do we have a new one? Probably not. I'll need to go to a hardware store. Can I come? Eli asked immediately. Eli? Claire's voice carried a warning. Please? I've never been to a hardware store. Mom always orders stuff online. Claire looked at Dante, something complex moving behind her eyes. This was a test, he realized. Not about fixing a sink, about whether she could trust him with their son, about whether letting Eli get closer was safe or stupid, or somewhere in between. It's up to your mom, Dante said carefully. Eli turned pleading eyes on Claire. Please? Just for a little bit? We'll come right back. Claire pressed her lips together, clearly torn. I don't know, baby. I'll bring him straight back, Dante said. 20 minutes, tops. Hardware store and back. You have my word. Your word. Claire said it like she was testing the weight of the phrase, seeing if it still meant anything. The hardware store on 5th? Yes. 20 minutes. If you're late, if anything happens, if he comes back upset, I understand. She looked at Eli. Coat, shoes, and you stay with Dante the whole time. No wandering off, no touching things without asking. Understand? I understand. Eli was already racing toward his room. Claire caught Dante's arm as he started to follow. Her grip was firm, her eyes fierce. He's 7 years old. He trusts everyone. He doesn't understand that the world can be dangerous or that people can hurt you even when they don't mean to. Her voice dropped lower. You bring him back safe. You bring him back happy. Or I swear, Dante, I will make you regret ever knocking on my door. I know. Do you? Because this isn't about us anymore. This isn't about our history or what we used to be to each other. This is about him, only him. And if you can't put him first, completely first, above everything else, including your ego and your control issues and your need to fix things, then you need to walk away right now. Dante met her eyes. I'm not walking away. Then prove it. Not with words, with actions. Show me you can be what he needs. Eli returned wearing his coat and sneakers, bouncing with excitement. Ready. Claire knelt and zipped his coat all the way up, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. Be good. Listen to Dante. Stay close. I will. I promise. She kissed his forehead, then looked up at Dante. The expression on her face was pure maternal ferocity, love and fear, and the bone-deep need to protect mixed into something that would destroy anything that threatened her child. Dante had never found her more beautiful. He nodded once, a silent promise, and led Eli out to the car. The Mercedes made Eli's eyes go wide. This is your car? Yeah. It's fancy. It's just a car. Dante opened the passenger door, then paused. Do you need a car seat? I'm 7. I use a booster seat, but Mom keeps it in her car. Eli climbed in and buckled himself. I know how to buckle. Mom taught me when I was 5. Dante got in the driver's seat, very aware of how small Eli looked in the expensive leather interior, how wrong this all was. This car. This life. Everything he'd built that had no place for a 7-year-old who needed booster seats and patient explanations. He drove carefully to the hardware store, hyper-aware of every turn, every stop, the precious cargo he was carrying. Eli pressed his face to the window, commenting on everything they passed. The Christmas lights still up on the buildings, the snow piled on corners, a dog walking with its owner. The hardware store was old school, family-owned, narrow aisles, helpful staff who knew where everything was. Dante led Eli to the plumbing section, found the washers, held them up so Eli could see. This is what we need. 3/4 inch. See how it matches the one I took out? Eli examined both carefully. They look the same. Because they are. That's how replacement parts work. Same size, same shape, so they fit exactly right. Like Legos. exactly like Legos. They paid. Eli insisted on carrying the small bag and headed back to the car. The whole trip had taken 12 minutes. Dante checked his watch, 8 minutes to spare. In the car, Eli was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you have kids?" The question gutted him. Dante's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you ask that?" "You're good at explaining stuff. Like you're used to talking to kids. My friend Tyler's dad talks to him like that. Patient, not annoyed." Dante's throat felt tight. "I don't have kids that I know well, but I'm learning." "Learning is good. Mom says you're never too old to learn new things." They pulled back onto Maple Street. Claire was watching through the window. Dante could see her silhouette, could imagine the tension in her shoulders, the fear that he wouldn't bring Eli back or would bring him back wrong somehow. 19 minutes total. He parked, and Eli unbuckled himself, clutching the bag of washers like treasure. Claire opened the door before they reached the porch. "We got the parts," Eli announced. And Dante explained how replacement parts work like Legos, and we were super fast and I buckled myself and, "Slow down, breathe." But Claire was smiling, relieved and surprised. She looked at Dante. 19 minutes. I said 20, figured I'd build in a buffer. Something shifted in her expression, recognition maybe, that he'd actually listened, actually followed through, actually put Eli first instead of his own timeline. "Thank you," she said quietly. They went back inside. Dante finished fixing the sink while Eli sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, still asking questions. How did water get to the house? Where did it come from? What made it turn off and on? Dante answered everything, aware of Claire watching from the doorway, evaluating every interaction. Finally, he turned the water on. No drip. The seal held perfect and tight. "Fixed," he announced. Eli cheered like Dante had just accomplished something monumental. "You did it!" "We did it. You helped. Can you fix other stuff too?" "Eli," Claire warned. "I just mean like if other things break. Because Mr. Patterson never comes, and Mom tries, but she's not good at tools. She says her superpower is words, not wrenches." Claire's cheeks flushed slightly. "I do fine. You flooded the bathroom last time you tried to fix the toilet. That was a learning experience?" Dante bit back a smile. "If something needs fixing and I can help, I'm happy to." Claire gave him a look that said they'd be discussing this later, but she didn't argue. Eli tugged on Dante's sleeve. "Do you want to see my telescope? The one I got for Christmas?" "Eli, Dante probably has things to do." "I'd love to see it," Dante said. So they went to Eli's room again, and Dante found himself sitting on the floor while his son, explained constellations and planets and how light years worked. The kid was smart, absorbing information like a sponge, connecting concepts in ways that showed real understanding. "Did you know the sun is actually a star?" Eli asked. "I did know that. And that it's going to explode someday, like way in the future, billions of years from now." "That's a long time." "Yeah, but it's still going to happen. Everything ends eventually, even stars." Eli said it matter-of-factly, with the acceptance of someone who hadn't learned yet that endings could hurt. But that's okay because new stars get made from the old ones. It's called the star cycle. Death and birth, over and over. Dante looked at this 7-year-old philosopher, this kid who understood cosmic recycling, and felt something crack open in his chest. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" Eli shrugged. "Mom says I ask good questions. That's the first step to being smart, asking about stuff you don't understand. Your mom's right about a lot of things." "I know. She's basically never wrong. It's annoying sometimes." Dante laughed despite himself. Claire appeared in the doorway, and he wondered how long she'd been standing there. "Lunchtime," she announced. "Dante, you're welcome to stay if you want." It was the first time she'd offered without prompting, the first invitation that came from her instead of circumstance or Maggie's interference. Dante stood, brushing off his jeans. "I'd like that, thank you." Lunch was simple, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the kind of meal that probably cost less than the appetizers at the restaurants Dante usually frequented. But eating at the small kitchen table, listening to Eli's running commentary on everything from soup temperature to the relative merits of different cheeses, felt more valuable than any 5-star meal. Claire was quieter, watching them interact with an expression that cycled between cautious and conflicted. Every time Eli laughed at something Dante said, her face did something complicated. Every time Dante was patient with a question or gentle with a correction, she seemed to be recalculating something. After lunch, Eli wanted to play a board game, some complicated thing involving dragons and dice. They sat on the living room floor, the three of them, while Eli explained rules that seemed to change every 5 minutes depending on what made the story more exciting. Dante found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did, letting go of the constant strategic thinking that governed his normal life. Here, with Eli, there was no angle to play, no leverage to gain, just a kid who wanted someone to roll dice with him and pretend dragons were real. Claire's phone rang. She stepped into the kitchen to answer it, her voice low and professional. Dante caught fragments, something about a deadline, an editor, revisions needed by Monday. When she returned, her expression was stressed. "Everything okay?" Dante asked. "Work stuff. I write content for websites, freelance, supposed to have something done by Monday, but with the holiday I'm behind." She looked at Eli, clearly torn. "I need to work this afternoon. Probably tonight too." "I can stay with him," Dante offered. Claire's eyes snapped to his. "What?" "I can stay. If you need to work, I'll keep him occupied, make sure he's safe." Dante, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He kept his voice even. "You have work. I have time. Eli and I will be fine. Right, Eli?" "Yeah. We can finish the dragon game and maybe build a fort." Claire looked between them, uncertainty written all over her face. This was bigger than 20 minutes at a hardware store. This was hours, unsupervised, trusting him completely. "I have my laptop," she said slowly. "I can work in my room. I'll be right here if you need anything." "We won't," Eli said confidently. "We're a good team. Right, Dante?" Dante's chest tightened. "Right." Claire hesitated another moment, then nodded. "Okay, but Eli, same rules. You listen, you stay close, you come get me if anything feels wrong." "I will." She retreated to her bedroom with her laptop, leaving Dante alone with his son in the small living room. For a moment, Dante felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the trust, the impossibility of living up to what this kid deserved. Then Eli handed him dice and pointed at the board. "Your turn. Roll for dragon damage." Dante rolled. The afternoon passed in a blur of make-believe and laughter. They played the dragon game until Eli declared victory and immediately wanted to start a new adventure. They built a fort using couch cushions and blankets. They read 3 chapters of a book about space exploration. They had a snack, apple slices that Dante cut into careful pieces, remembering from somewhere that kids Eli's age could choke on large chunks. Every little decision felt monumental. Every interaction a test Dante wasn't sure he was passing. But Eli didn't seem to notice the nervousness, the uncertainty. He just kept talking, laughing, pulling Dante into his world with complete trust. At one point, mid-fort construction, Eli paused and looked at Dante seriously. "You're not as scary as you look." "No?" "No. You're actually kind of fun, in a serious way." "Fun in a serious way. I'll take it." "Do you have to leave soon?" The question landed with unexpected weight. Dante thought about his empty house, his untouched work, the life waiting for him outside this small, warm space. "Not yet," he said. "Not until your mom says." "Good, because I like having you here." 4 words. Simple, honest, devastating. "I like having you here." Dante's vision blurred slightly. He blinked it away, focused on securing a blanket corner to the couch. "I like being here too," he managed. Claire emerged from her room around 5, looking tired but lighter, like she'd accomplished what she needed to. She stopped in the living room doorway, taking in the scene. The elaborate blanket fort, Eli's delighted face, Dante sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "How's it going?" she asked. "We built a fortress," Eli announced, "and defeated the dragon, and read about Mars. And Dante said we can have popcorn for dinner if you say yes." Claire raised an eyebrow at Dante. "Did he now?" "I said we could ask you," Dante corrected. "Final decision is always yours." Something in Claire's expression softened. She was starting to understand, maybe, that he meant it. That he wasn't trying to undermine her authority or win Eli's affection with permissiveness. That he was actually, genuinely, trying to respect her rules. "Popcorn can be part of dinner," she said, "but we need protein too." Eli groaned dramatically, but didn't argue. They dismantled the fort and moved to the kitchen. Dante found himself helping without being asked, setting the table, filling water glasses, moving around the small space like he belonged there. It felt dangerous, this comfort, this easy domesticity. like he was playing house, pretending at a life that wasn't his and never would be. But Eli kept smiling at him, and Claire kept allowing him to stay. And for one afternoon, Dante let himself imagine what it might be like if this was real, if he actually belonged here, if he'd made different choices 7 years ago, if he could somehow, impossibly, find his way back to something he'd destroyed through his own stubbornness and pride. After dinner, Eli started yawning. Claire sent him to brush his teeth and change into pajamas. When he was gone, she turned to Dante. "You should probably go." "I know. Today was—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "It was good. You were good with him, patient, present. He's easy to be patient with. You say that now. Wait until he asks you the same question 40 times in a row." But she was almost smiling. "Thank you. For staying. For helping. For keeping your word about bringing him back on time." "I meant what I said, Claire. I want to do this right. Whatever that looks like. Whatever rules you need." She studied him with those dark eyes that had always seen too much. "Why? Why what? Why now? Why this? You walked away 7 years ago. You could have stayed away forever. What changed?" Dante thought about Christmas Eve, about opening that door and seeing his own eyes in a stranger's face, about realizing in one devastating moment how much he'd lost. "I didn't know what I was walking away from," he said quietly. "Now I do. And I can't unknow it. Can't unsee him. Can't pretend I don't have a son who's smart and funny and deserves better than what I gave him, which was nothing. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have called you. Should have checked on you. Should have done 1,000 things differently." He met her eyes. "I failed you, Claire. Failed you both. And I can't fix that. Can't take back 7 years. But I can show up now. I can try now. And I'm asking you to let me." Claire's jaw tightened. For a moment he thought she might cry. Instead, she crossed her arms. "This isn't about us. I know. Even if you're here every day, even if Eli loves you, even if you become the world's best father, we're not getting back together. That's not on the table. That ship sailed." The words hurt more than Dante expected, but he'd known this was coming, had prepared himself for it. "I understand. Do you? Because you have a history of not accepting no for an answer, of pushing until you get what you want. And I need to know you won't do that here. Won't use Eli as leverage or access to me as a prize, or I won't." Dante kept his voice steady. "This is about him, only him. You're his mother. You make the rules. And whatever we were or weren't to each other, that's over. I'm here for Eli, nothing else." Claire searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the strategy. When she didn't find it, something in her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Okay," she said. "Okay." Eli returned in his snowman pajamas, hair damp from washing his face. "Do you have to go?" "Yeah, buddy. It's getting late. Can you come back?" Dante looked at Claire. She hesitated, then nodded once. "I can come back, if your mom says it's okay." "She says it's okay, right, Mom?" Claire sighed. "We'll see." But "we'll see" from Claire wasn't the same as maybe. Dante was learning to read her subtle gradations of permission. This was closer to yes than it was to no. He said goodbye to Eli, who hugged him quickly before running off to his room. The hug was brief, casual, the kind of thing kids did without thinking. It meant everything. Claire walked him to the door. "Same rules," she said. "You want to see him, you ask first. You don't just show up. You respect my boundaries. And the second I think this is hurting him instead of helping, it's over." "Understood." She opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the promise of snow. "Good night, Dante." "Good night, Claire." He walked to his car, every step feeling heavier than the last. Behind him, warm light glowed in the windows of the small house. Inside, his son was probably already asleep, dreaming about dragons or dinosaurs or distant planets. Dante sat in his car and allowed himself one moment of pure, uncomplicated feeling. Pride that he'd done okay. Relief that Claire was giving him chances. Fear that he'd screw this up. Hope that maybe, possibly, he could become the father Eli deserved. Then he started the engine and drove home, already planning when he could come back. Because "we'll see" was starting to sound an awful lot like yes. And yes was all Dante needed to keep trying. The pattern established itself over the next 2 weeks with a rhythm that surprised them both. Dante would text in the morning asking if he could visit. Claire would say yes or suggest a different time. He'd show up exactly when he said he would, stay as long as she allowed, and leave without pushing for more. He brought groceries once, not expensive organic things from specialty stores, but regular food from the same chain store Claire used, items he'd seen running low in her pantry. She'd looked at the bags with suspicion until she realized he'd bought exactly what she would have bought. Nothing fancy. Nothing that screamed money. Just milk and bread and the specific brand of peanut butter Eli preferred. Another time, he'd arrived with a book about dinosaurs he'd found at a used bookstore, the kind with detailed illustrations and age-appropriate facts. Eli had devoured it in one sitting, asking Dante to read passages aloud, fact-checking details against his telescope book like a tiny scholar. Dante learned the shape of their lives through small details. Claire worked mornings when Eli was at school, writing articles and website copy that paid the bills but didn't quite cover everything. Eli had a best friend named Marcus who lived 3 doors down. They ate dinner at 6 every night. Bedtime was 8:30 sharp, no negotiations. He learned that Eli hated broccoli but would eat it if you called it dinosaur trees. That Claire drank her coffee black in the morning but added cream in the afternoon. That the house got cold at night because they kept the thermostat low to save money. He learned how to be present without controlling, how to help without taking over, how to offer without expecting gratitude. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. On the 10th day, Claire's mother returned for dinner, and Dante found himself subjected to Maggie's cheerful interrogation while they set the table together. "So you're around a lot now," Maggie observed, handing him forks. "For an old friend." "I like spending time with Eli." "Uh-huh. And with my daughter?" Dante glanced toward the kitchen where Claire was helping Eli wash his hands. "Claire and I are figuring things out." "Figuring what out exactly?" "How to be in each other's lives. For Eli's sake." Maggie studied him with the sharp attention of someone who'd raised a daughter alone, who'd watched that daughter survive a devastating divorce, who'd helped pick up the pieces when the world fell apart. She set down the napkins she'd been folding. "That man she was married to," Maggie said quietly. "He broke something in her, not permanently, thank heavens, but deep enough that it took years to heal. She doesn't trust easy anymore, doesn't let people close. And if you're here because you think you can fix her or win her back or recapture some past that's dead and buried, you should leave now before you do more damage." The words landed like physical blows. Dante met Maggie's eyes. "I'm not trying to fix her or win her back." "Then what are you trying to do?" "Be Eli's father, that's all. That's enough." Maggie tilted her head, evaluating. "You care about him, I can see that. The way you listen when he talks. The patience you show, that's real. He's easy to care about. All kids are easy to care about when they're good and happy and well-behaved. The question is whether you'll still be here when things get hard. When Eli's having a bad day, when Claire's stressed and snapping. When the novelty wears off and this is just regular life with regular problems." Dante thought about his empty mansion, his controlled existence, the life he could return to any time he wanted. Easy and predictable and lonely. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "We'll see." But Maggie squeezed his arm as she passed, a gesture that felt almost like approval. Dinner that night was louder than usual. Maggie told stories about Claire's childhood that made Eli laugh and Claire groan. Dante found himself relaxing into the chaos, the overlapping conversations, the easy affection that filled the small dining space. This was what family looked like, messy and warm and real. After Maggie left and Eli was in bed, Claire made tea and sat across from Dante at the kitchen table. They'd fallen into this habit, these quiet conversations after Eli slept, when the house was still and they could talk without little ears listening. "My mom likes you," Claire said. "I can tell. She threatened me earlier, very politely." "That means she likes you. She only threatens people she thinks might stick around." Claire wrapped her hands around her mug. "Are you going to stick around?" "As long as you'll let me." "Even when it's boring? When it's just regular Tuesday nights and nothing special?" "Especially then." She looked at him over the rim of her mug, something complicated in her expression. "I need to tell you something. About the divorce." Dante went very still. They'd avoided this topic carefully, dancing around the edges of their shared past without diving into the wreckage. But her tone said this was important, something she'd been holding on to. "Okay," he said. Claire set down her mug and took a breath. "You remember the pictures? The ones that showed up right before everything fell apart?" He remembered. Photos of Claire with another man, Jonathan Hayes, a colleague from her old job. The images had shown them having coffee, laughing, his hand on her shoulder. Nothing explicitly romantic, but intimate enough to plant seeds of doubt. The photos had arrived at Dante's office anonymously, and he'd confronted Claire instead of trusting her. The fight that followed had been nuclear. I remember, Dante said carefully, they were real photos, but they weren't what they looked like. She met his eyes. Jonathan was gay, Dante. Deeply closeted because of his family, but gay. We were friends, just friends. He was helping me figure out how to leave you without you destroying me in the process. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Dante felt the floor shift under him. Leave me? I was planning to ask for a divorce. Had been planning it for months because I couldn't breathe anymore. Couldn't make a single decision without running it past you. Couldn't have coffee with a friend without it becoming an interrogation. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. Jonathan was helping me find a lawyer. Someone who could protect me if you decided to use your resources to make things difficult. Dante's throat felt like sandpaper. I would never have. Wouldn't you? Claire's eyes were sad. You controlled everything else. Why not that? He had no answer, because she was right. Back then, if Claire had tried to leave, he would have fought it with every tool at his disposal. Not out of malice, but out of the absolute conviction that he knew what was best for both of them. Someone sent you those pictures intentionally, Claire continued, timed them perfectly to make you suspicious, to make you blow up instead of listening. And it worked. You accused me of cheating. I was so angry that you'd assume the worst instead of trusting me that I didn't defend myself. I just told you if that's what you thought, we should end it. Who sent them? I don't know. At first I thought maybe it was someone from your world, a rival who wanted to destabilize you. But later I wondered if it was simpler than that. If it was someone who knew us both and saw an opportunity to push us toward a break that was coming anyway. Dante's mind raced through possibilities. His business had plenty of enemies. But someone who knew them both personally, who'd want them apart? 3 days after the divorce was finalized, Claire said, I found out I was pregnant, and I had a choice to make. Tell you and get pulled back into your orbit. Let you use Eli as leverage or access or another thing to control. Or raise him alone away from all of it. You thought I'd use my own son as leverage? I thought you'd do what you always did, decide what was best and make it happen, whether I agreed or not. She looked down at her hands. I was probably wrong, or at least not entirely right. But I was scared and angry and so tired of fighting, so I chose different. I chose to protect him the only way I knew how. Dante absorbed this slowly. The manipulation, the perfectly timed destruction of their marriage. Claire's decision to raise Eli alone not out of malice, but out of fear of who Dante had been. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it, for not trusting you, for being the kind of man you needed protection from, for missing 7 years because I was too proud to call and check on you. I'm sorry, too, for not telling you about Eli, for assuming the worst, for... Her voice cracked slightly. For letting someone else's manipulation define our ending. They sat in silence, the weight of 7 years and countless mistakes, settling between them like snow. Can I ask you something? Dante said finally. Yeah. If we could go back, knowing what we know now, would you have married me? Claire's laugh was soft and broken. I don't know. I loved you so much back then. But love wasn't the problem. The problem was you loved me like I was something to protect, and I needed someone who'd let me protect myself. She looked up. Would you have married me? Yes, but I would have done it different, listened more, controlled less, trusted that you knew what you needed better than I did. We were so young, 24 and 26. What did we know about marriage or partnership or any of it? Not enough, apparently. Claire smiled sadly. No, not nearly enough. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, marking time that couldn't be recovered. Dante wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, promise her things could be different now. But those promises had failed before, and this wasn't about them anymore. Thank you for telling me, he said instead. About all of it. You deserve to know the truth, even if it doesn't change anything. It changes how I see our ending, makes it less about failure and more about, I don't know, circumstances. Bad timing. Someone else's agenda. Does that make it easier? No, but it makes it clearer. Claire stood collecting mugs. Dante rose to help, but she waved him off. At the sink, she paused. Eli's been asking questions. Dante's pulse kicked up. What kind of questions? About you. Why you're here so much. Whether you have a family. If we're... She stopped, choosing words. If we're together. What did you tell him? That we're old friends. That you care about him. That relationships are complicated. He's 7. Does he understand complicated? He understands more than you'd think. Claire turned to face him. But he's also starting to get attached, to expect you, to plan his day around whether you're coming over. And that scares me, Dante. Because kids get attached, and then people leave, and I'm not leaving. You say that now. But what happens when this gets hard? When the reality of co-parenting sinks in? When you realize being a father isn't just fixing reindeer and reading dinosaur books? Then I figure it out, same as every other parent. You're not every other parent. You're a man who's used to control and power and getting what he wants. And parenting is none of those things. It's compromise and flexibility, and putting someone else first even when it costs you everything. Dante moved closer, careful not to crowd her, but close enough to make sure she heard him. I know I haven't earned your trust. No, I have no right to ask for it, but I'm asking anyway. Trust me with this. With him. Give me the chance to prove I can be steady. And if you can't? If you fail? If Eli ends up hurt because I let you in too close? Then you shut me out and I live with that. But Claire, you can't protect him from every possible hurt. At some point you have to let him have a father and risk that I might screw it up. Her eyes shimmered. He asked me today if you were going to be his dad. The words punched all the air from Dante's lungs. What did you say? I said I didn't know, that some things take time to figure out. She crossed her arms. But he needs an answer eventually. A real one. And I need to know what you want. Not what you think I want to hear. What you actually want from this. Dante thought about Eli's gray-green eyes and dinosaur facts and absolute trust. Thought about the hole in his life he hadn't known existed until he'd seen his son for the first time. I want to be his father, legally, officially, not just the guy who shows up when it's convenient, but his actual dad. He held Claire's gaze. I want my name on his birth certificate. Want to help with school and doctor's appointments and all the boring regular things. Want him to know me not as your friend or the guy who fixed the reindeer, but as the person who's going to show up for him no matter what. That's a big commitment. I know. It means child support, co-parenting decisions, legal obligations. I know. It means putting his needs before your work, your schedule, your entire life as you know it. I know, Claire. I know all of it. And I'm still asking. She studied him for a long time, looking for cracks in his certainty, for the moment he'd backtrack or qualify or add conditions. He didn't. I need to think about it, she said finally. This isn't a decision I make in my kitchen at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. This is his whole life. His sense of stability, his understanding of family. Take whatever time you need. And I need you to understand something. Her voice went quiet but firm. If we do this, if I let you be his legal father, we're connected forever. Not as a couple, not romantically, but as parents, co-parents. And you don't get to walk away if things get messy or complicated or hard. I'm not walking away. Everyone says that until they do. The pain in her voice was old, deep, scarred over, but not healed. Someone had walked away from her once. Multiple someones, maybe. And Dante had been one of them, whether he'd known about Eli or not. I can't promise I'll be perfect, he said. Can't promise I won't make mistakes or screw things up. But I can promise I'll show up. Every day. Every hard day. Every complicated, messy, impossible day. I'll be there. Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back, jaw set. Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll think about it. Really think about it. And I'll talk to Eli, see how he feels. And then we'll figure out next steps. She took a shaky breath. But Dante, if we do this, you need to know what you're signing up for. He's 7. You missed 7 years. You don't get those back. You don't get first steps or first words or any of the baby stuff. You get now. You get a kid who's already formed opinions and personality and questions you can't always answer. I know. Do you? Because I see how you look at him sometimes. Like you're mourning all the things you missed. And I need you to let that go. You can't parent from a place of guilt or regret. You have to parent from where you are now. She was right. Dante had been carrying the weight of 7 lost years, letting it color every interaction, every moment, trying to make up for time that couldn't be recovered. How do I let it go? I don't know. Therapy, maybe. Time. Forgiving yourself. She shrugged. All I know is Eli doesn't need your guilt. He needs your presence. I'll work on it. Good. She handed him his coat. It's late. You should go. Dante took the coat but didn't put it on immediately. Can I ask one more thing? What? Do you regret it? Keeping Eli from me? Claire was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. Sometimes. When he asks why other kids have dads and he doesn't. When I'm drowning in bills and work and single-parent exhaustion. When he's sick and I'm scared and there's no one to share the fear with. She looked up. But then I remember who you were, how I felt back then, and I think I made the best choice I could with the information I had, even if it cost us both something. Thank you for being honest. You keep asking for honesty. Eventually you're going to hear things you don't like. I can handle it. We'll see. He left then, stepping out into the cold January night. The drive home felt different this time. Not lonely exactly, but solitary in a way that felt chosen rather than inevitable. His phone rang halfway home. Claire. His heart jumped. Everything okay? Eli's awake. He heard us talking. Not everything, but enough to know we were discussing something serious. She sounded tired. He wants to ask you something tomorrow, when you come over. If you're coming over? I'm coming over. Same time as usual? Yeah, and Dante, be ready. When he asks hard questions, he doesn't let you dodge them with vague adult answers. He wants real answers, true ones. I'll tell him the truth. That's what I'm afraid of. She hung up before he could respond. Dante drove the rest of the way home, trying to imagine what Eli would ask. Whether you're my dad? Why weren't you here before? Are you staying? All questions that deserved answers he wasn't sure how to give. At home, the mansion felt more oppressive than usual. All this space for one person. All this expensive nothing. Dante walked through rooms he barely used, past furniture that was more art than functional, through a life built for showing off rather than living in. His phone buzzed. A text from Marco. Boss, we've got an opportunity. Big contract. Needs your approval tonight. Dante looked at the message. A month ago, even a week ago, he would have called immediately. Would have dove into the details, made the decision, kept the machine running. Tonight he typed back. Handle it. I trust your judgment. Marco. You sure? This is 7 figures. Dante. I'm sure. You've got this. A pause, then, okay. Thanks for the trust. Dante set the phone down and poured himself water he didn't want. Stood at the kitchen window looking out at grounds maintained by people he never saw, a pool he never used, a life that had seemed successful until he'd seen what real life looked like. His phone rang again. Not Marco this time. His mother. Dante, baby, you sound tired. It's late, Ma. Then why aren't you sleeping? Thinking. About? Claire, Eli. How to be what he needs when I don't know what that is. Rosa was quiet for a moment. You know what your father told me when you were born. He said he was terrified. Said he didn't know how to be a dad, didn't know if he was capable. I told him nobody knows how until they do it. You learn by showing up. What if showing up isn't enough? It's always enough. Kids don't need perfect. They need present. She paused. This Claire, she's giving you a chance? Maybe. She's thinking about it. Smart woman. Making you earn it instead of just handing it over. Rosa's approval was clear. You listen to her, Dante. She knows that boy better than anyone. And if she says you're not ready or you're doing it wrong, you listen. Your pride isn't worth more than your son's well-being. I know. Do you? Because you Moretti men, you're proud. It's in your bones, and pride makes you do stupid things. I'm trying to be different, Ma. I know you are, baby. I can hear it. You sound, I don't know, more real. More like the boy you were before everything got complicated. She sighed. I'm proud of you. Your father would be proud, too. Dante's throat tightened. His father had been dead 6 years, buried with honors and expensive flowers, and a funeral that looked more like a corporate event than a goodbye. They'd never talked about real things. Never discussed feelings or fears or the cost of the life they'd built. Thanks, Ma. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you answer that boy's questions honest. Whatever he asks, you tell him truth. Kids can handle truth. It's lies that break them. She hung up, leaving Dante alone in his kitchen with her words echoing. He went to bed but didn't sleep well, mind cycling through possible questions and answers, trying to prepare for a conversation he couldn't predict. Morning came gray and cold. Dante showered, dressed in his normal clothes, forced down breakfast. Texted Claire at 9. "Still okay if I come by this afternoon?" Her response was immediate. "Yes. 2 p.m. Eli's been waiting to talk to you since he woke up." Dante spent the hours until 2 trying to work and failing. Tried reading articles about how to talk to kids about difficult topics. Tried meditating, something he'd never been good at. Tried everything except the one thing that might have helped. Admitting he was terrified. At exactly 2 p.m., he pulled up to the house on Maple Street. Eli opened the door before Dante could knock. His small face was serious, determined, older somehow than it had been yesterday. "Hi," Eli said. "Hi, buddy. I need to ask you something important. Mom said you'd tell me the truth." Dante's heart hammered. "I will. I promise." Eli stepped back to let him in. Claire was in the kitchen, watching with an expression that was equal parts supportive and protective, ready to intervene if this went wrong, ready to end this if Dante hurt their son. Eli led Dante to the couch and sat down, patting the cushion next to him. Dante sat, very aware of Claire in the doorway, of how small Eli looked, of how massive this moment felt. "Okay," Eli said, taking a deep breath like he'd been practicing. "I heard you and Mom talking last night about being my dad, legal and official and stuff." He looked up with those gray-green eyes. "Are you my real dad? Like, biologically?" The question landed clean and direct, no room for dodging. Dante glanced at Claire. She gave the smallest nod. He looked back at Eli. "Yes, I'm your biological father." Eli absorbed this, his face cycling through emotions too fast to track. Confusion, understanding, something that might have been relief or might have been fear. "So why weren't you here before for my whole life?" And there it was. The question Dante had been dreading, the one with no good answer that didn't involve blaming someone or making excuses or admitting failures that a 7-year-old shouldn't have to understand. Claire's words echoed. "Whatever he asks, you tell him truth." Dante took a breath and told his son the truth. "I didn't know you existed," Dante said, meeting Eli's eyes directly. "Your mom and I got divorced before she found out she was pregnant with you. And she made a choice not to tell me because she thought it was safer for you. Because back then, I wasn't a very good person. I was controlling and difficult and the kind of man she needed to protect you from." Eli's brow furrowed. "But you're nice now. You fix stuff and play games and explain things." "I'm trying to be better now. But 7 years ago, I didn't know how to be the kind of dad you deserved. Your mom did the right thing keeping you safe." Dante's voice stayed steady even as his chest felt like it was cracking open. "So I wasn't here because I didn't know about you. And when I found out, on Christmas Eve when I knocked on your door, I realized I'd missed 7 years of your life. And that's my fault for not being the kind of person your mom could trust back then." "So it's not Mom's fault?" "No, it's mine, for being someone she couldn't tell. For not staying in touch to make sure she was okay. For a lot of things." Eli processed this with the gravity of someone much older. "Are you going to leave again?" The question stabbed straight through. Dante looked at Claire, who was watching with her hand pressed to her mouth, eyes bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. "No," Dante said. "I'm not leaving. I'm going to be here as much as your mom lets me, for as long as you want me." "What if I want you forever?" The words nearly destroyed him. Dante swallowed hard. "Then I'll be here forever. Do you promise?" "I promise, Eli. I promise I will show up for you. I won't be perfect, and I'll make mistakes, but I will always, always show up." Eli was quiet for a long moment, his small face serious. Then he asked the question that mattered most. "Do you want to be my dad? Like, really my dad? Not just biologically, but the kind who stays and helps with homework and comes to school stuff?" Dante's vision blurred. He blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of his son, refusing to make this about his emotions when it needed to be about Eli's. "Yes," he said, voice rough, "more than I've ever wanted anything in my entire life. If you'll let me. I have a condition." "Okay. What is it?" Eli looked at him with those devastating eyes. "You can't ever make my mom sad again. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. Not a lot, but sometimes. And if you're going to be my dad, you have to promise not to make her cry. The condition was impossible and perfect, and exactly what a 7-year-old who loved his mother would demand. Dante glanced at Claire, who was definitely crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I will do everything in my power not to make your mom sad, Dante said carefully. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, or that we'll never disagree, but I promise I will respect her and listen to her and always remember that she's the best mom you could ever have. Is that good enough? Eli thought about it. Okay, that's good enough. So can I be your dad? Yeah. Eli said it simply, like he'd just agreed to something small instead of something that changed everything. You can be my dad. Dante pulled Eli into a hug, careful and firm, holding his son for the first time with permission and understanding and the weight of everything those words meant. Eli hugged back, his small arms wrapping around Dante's neck, his face pressed against Dante's shoulder. I'm sorry I wasn't here before, Dante whispered. I'm so sorry. It's okay. You're here now. That's what Mom says matters most. Not where you were, but where you are. Claire made a small sound from the doorway. When Dante looked up, she was smiling through her tears, one hand still covering her mouth, the other wrapped around her middle like she was holding herself together. Eli pulled back from the hug. Can I tell Marcus? He's going to be so excited. He has a dad, and now I have one too. You can tell Marcus, Claire said, her voice thick. But maybe give Dante and me a few minutes to talk first. Okay, I'm going to draw a picture of our family, with 3 people now instead of 2. Eli hopped off the couch and ran to his room, already calling out details about what colors he'd use. Dante stood, and Claire walked toward him slowly, like she was approaching something fragile. When she reached him, she stopped just out of reach. That was good, she said. What you told him. Honest without being harsh. Age-appropriate. I meant every word. I know, I could tell. She wiped her eyes. He's going to hold you to that promise. When you said you'd show up for him, he heard it. And kids, remember, if you break that promise, I won't. Dante, you can't know that. Life happens. Things get complicated. You might have work emergencies or travel or then I'll figure it out. Bring him with me if I have to. Video call if I can't be there in person. But I won't disappear. I won't be the dad who promises and then vanishes. He stepped closer. I need you to believe that. I'm trying to. Her voice broke slightly. I'm really trying to believe you're different now. That this isn't just novelty or guilt. That you actually want this life, even when it's boring and hard and nothing like what you're used to. I don't want my old life, Claire. I want this. Want him. Want to be the person he thinks I am when he looks at me. She studied his face, searching for cracks. For the moment he'd backtrack or qualify or reveal this was all performance. When she didn't find it, something in her shoulders relaxed. Okay, we'll do this. Officially. She took a shaky breath. We'll add your name to his birth certificate. Set up custody arrangements, child support, all of it. But we do it right, Dante. Legal and clear and structured so everyone knows what's expected. Whatever you want, whatever makes you comfortable. And we need to talk about the other thing, the reason our marriage ended, the photos, the manipulation. She crossed her arms. Because if someone tried to destroy us once, they might try again, especially if they find out you're back in our lives. Dante had been thinking about this since their conversation last night. The timing of those photos had been too perfect, the destruction too complete. Someone had wanted them apart. Do you remember who you were working with back then, at your old job? Claire frowned, thinking. It was a small marketing firm, maybe 20 employees total. Why? Because whoever sent those photos knew about Jonathan, knew he was helping you, knew the timing would maximize damage. Dante's mind clicked through possibilities. That suggests inside knowledge, someone who knew both of us. Most of my coworkers never met you. We kept our lives pretty separate. What about Jonathan, who knew he was helping you find a lawyer? No one. We were careful. He was terrified of being outed, and I was terrified of you finding out I was planning to leave. She paused. Wait, there was one person. My friend Rachel. She worked in accounting, knew I was unhappy. I might have mentioned Jonathan was helping me. Rachel. The name stirred something in Dante's memory. Tall, blonde, worked in your office? Yeah. Why? Because I remember her. She came to one company event, Asked a lot of questions about my work. I thought she was just curious. He met Claire's eyes. What if she wasn't just curious? What if she was fishing for information? Claire's expression shifted from confusion to realization. She left the firm right after our divorce, said she got a better offer somewhere else. I always thought the timing was weird, but I was too destroyed to question it. Did she stay in touch? For a few months. Then she just stopped calling. I figured she'd moved on, made new friends. Claire's voice hardened. You think she's the one who sent the photos? Why would she do that? I don't know, but I can find out. Dante pulled out his phone. What was her full name? Rachel Kensington. But Dante, even if she did send them, what does it matter now? It's been 7 years. We can't change what happened. No, but we can make sure it doesn't happen again. He texted Marco. Need you to find someone. Rachel Kensington. Worked at Morrison Marketing 7 years ago. Everything you can find. Discreet. The response came within seconds. On it. Claire watched him with a mixture of concern and something else. This is what I meant. About control. You can't just investigate people because they might have hurt us. I'm not investigating to hurt her. I'm investigating to protect you and Eli. If someone went to that much trouble to break us apart, they might do it again, especially now. Dante put his phone away. I need to know what we're dealing with. And if you find out she did it? What then? Nothing. Unless she's still a threat. Then we handle it. He softened his tone. Claire, I'm not the same man who would have used information like this as a weapon. I just want to know the truth, and I want to make sure Eli's safe. She wanted to argue. He could see it on her face, the old instinct to push back against his need to control situations. But she also knew he was right. If someone had deliberately destroyed their marriage, that person might try to interfere again. Fine, she said. But you tell me everything you find out. No secrets. No protecting me from information I deserve to have. Deal. Eli emerged from his room holding a piece of paper covered in crayon figures. Look, it's us. The drawing showed 3 stick figures, one tall with dark scribbles for hair labeled Dad, one medium-sized labeled Mom, and one small labeled Me. They were holding hands under a yellow circle sun, standing in front of a blue rectangle house. It was rudimentary and perfect and absolutely destroying. That's beautiful, buddy, Dante managed. Can you stay for dinner? Eli asked. We're having spaghetti. It's my favorite. Dante looked at Claire. She hesitated, then nodded. I can stay. The afternoon dissolved into domesticity that felt both foreign and natural. Dante helped Eli set the table while Claire cooked. They ate together, conversation flowing easily, Eli narrating every thought that crossed his mind. After dinner, they played the dragon game again, then read 3 chapters of the space book. At bedtime, Eli asked Dante to help tuck him in. Mom usually does it, Eli explained as they walked to his bedroom. But since you're my dad now, you should learn how. Claire followed, leaning against the doorframe as Dante attempted to navigate the specific ritual Eli required. Blankets tucked just so. Stuffed T-Rex positioned within arm's reach. Nightlight turned to the exact right brightness. You're doing it wrong, Eli said when Dante tucked the blankets too loose. Show me how you like it. Eli demonstrated, very patient, very serious. Dante followed instructions until everything was exactly right. There, Eli said, satisfied. Now you know for next time. Next time, Dante repeated, the words feeling like promise and gift combined. Good night, Dad. Eli said it casually, testing out the word, seeing how it felt. Dante's throat closed completely. Good night, Eli. He kissed his son's forehead, the first time he'd done so, the gesture feeling monumental, and followed Claire out of the room. In the hallway, she was crying again. Silent tears she wiped away quickly. Sorry, she said. I don't know why I keep crying. I'm not sad. I'm just overwhelmed? Yeah. And relieved and terrified and happy, all of it at once. She looked at him. He called you Dad? I know. He's never called anyone that before, never wanted to. And now, her voice broke. Now he has you, and I'm so scared you're going to mess this up. I'm scared too. The admission seemed to surprise her. You're scared? Terrified. Every single day. That I'll say the wrong thing or make the wrong choice or revert to who I used to be and lose this before I really have it. Dante met her eyes. But being scared isn't a reason not to try. It's a reason to try harder. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small in his, warm and real. We should probably talk logistics, custody schedule, financial support, school decisions, all the practical stuff that makes this work. Okay? When? Now. While he's asleep and we can think clearly. They went to the kitchen and sat at the table with coffee and paper. For the next 2 hours, they worked through details. Dante would have Eli every Wednesday evening and every other weekend. He'd cover health insurance, contribute to school expenses, split major decisions 50-50. Claire would retain primary custody, but they'd revisit arrangements as Eli got older. It was negotiation stripped of romance, practical and necessary, and surprisingly easy. They'd both changed enough to prioritize Eli's needs over their own egos. There's one more thing, Claire said as they finished. The legal stuff. Adding you to the birth certificate, establishing paternity. We'll need lawyers. I'll handle the costs. You pick the lawyers so you're comfortable. That's actually fair. Thank you. They sat in the quiet kitchen, the agreement between them feeling solid and real. Dante's phone buzzed. Marco. Found Kensington. You're going to want to see this. Sending encrypted file now. Dante opened the files on his phone. Photos, employment records, financial transactions. Rachel Kensington had indeed left Morrison Marketing 7 years ago. But not for a better job. She'd been paid a substantial sum by someone Dante knew. His blood went cold. Vincent Russo, a rival family head who'd been trying to absorb Moretti operations for years, who'd seen Dante's marriage as a weakness to exploit. What is it? Claire asked, seeing his expression. Dante turned the phone so she could see. Rachel Kensington was paid $50,000 by Vincent Russo 3 days before those photos showed up. The payment was labeled consulting services, but the timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Claire read through the documents, her face going pale. He paid her to destroy our marriage? Looks like it. Probably figured if I was distracted by personal chaos, I'd be easier to undermine professionally. Dante's jaw tightened. He was right. After the divorce, I was unfocused, made mistakes, almost lost 2 major contracts. Did you lose them? No, but it was close. He closed the file. Vincent's been quiet lately, retired from active operations about 2 years ago, last I heard. Lives in Florida now, completely out of the game. So this doesn't matter anymore. We can't change the past. No, but we can make sure he doesn't try anything in the future. Dante looked at her. I'm going to have Marco send a message. Nothing threatening, just making it clear that you and Eli are off limits, that if Vincent or anyone connected to him comes near either of you, there will be consequences. Dante, you said you were out of that world. I am, but I still have resources. Still have people who respect boundaries when they're clearly established. He took her hand. This isn't about revenge, Claire. It's about making sure you're safe. Both of you. She wanted to argue. He could see the resistance in her eyes, the discomfort with him using old connections and old methods, but she also understood the reality. Some threats required clear deterrence. Okay, she said finally, but nothing that escalates, nothing that puts Eli at risk, nothing that puts either of you at risk. I promise. He texted Marco back. Send word to Russo through channels. Claire Hayes and Eli are family now. Completely off limits. Make sure he understands this isn't negotiable. Marco. Done. Consider it handled. Dante put his phone away and focused on Claire. It's done. He won't bother you. How can you be sure? Because men like Vincent understand one thing perfectly. Family boundaries. Now that Eli is officially mine, you're both under family protection. He'll respect that or face unified response from people who still care about those rules. It was a glimpse into the world Dante was leaving behind, the structures and codes that had governed his life for decades. Claire saw it clearly, understood what it meant. I don't like that this is necessary, she said. Neither do I, but I'd rather have protection in place and not need it than need it and not have it. She nodded slowly. They sat in silence for a moment, processing everything that had happened in one afternoon. A son claimed, a father accepted. Old wounds acknowledged, future threats neutralized. You should probably go, Claire said finally, though she didn't sound like she meant it. It's late, and we both need sleep. Dante stood but didn't move toward the door. Can I ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest? Okay. Do you think there's any chance, any possibility at all, That we could try again? Not now, but someday. When we've figured out the co-parenting thing and proven we can work together. When enough time has passed that we're not the same people we were. Claire looked at him with an expression so complex it defied description. Sadness and longing and fear and something that might have been hope, all tangled together. I don't know, she said honestly. I loved you once. Loved you so much I thought I'd die from it. But that love almost destroyed me, made me smaller, made me lose myself. She stood facing him across the small kitchen. I don't know if I can risk that again. Even if you're different, even if we're both different. That's fair. But I also don't know if I can watch you be this version of yourself, patient and present and actually listening, and not wonder what we could have been if you'd been this person back then. Her voice cracked. So I don't have an answer, Dante. All I know is right now, today, we need to focus on Eli. On being good parents, on proving we can put him first. Everything else is too complicated to think about. Dante wanted to argue, wanted to make the case for why they could work now when they couldn't before, wanted to promise he'd changed enough, grown enough, learned enough to love her without controlling her. But Claire's wisdom was in knowing that actions mattered more than promises. That time would prove what words couldn't. You're right, he said. Eli first. Everything else later. Or never. Whatever's best for him. Thank you for understanding. He moved toward the door, and this time she didn't stop him. At the threshold, he turned back. I'm going to prove it to you. Not through big gestures or expensive gifts or anything dramatic. Just by showing up every day. Being steady. Being present. Being the father Eli deserves and the partner you needed me to be 7 years ago. And if steady isn't enough, if we figure out we're better as co-parents than as anything else, then that's enough. Because having Eli in my life, being his father, is more than I thought I'd ever have. I'm not going to risk that by pushing for something you're not ready to give. Claire's eyes shimmered with fresh tears. How did you get so wise? I lost everything once. Learned from it. Got a second chance I don't deserve. He smiled sadly. That'll make anyone wise real fast. She walked him to the door, and for a moment they stood close enough that Dante could smell her shampoo, could count the freckles on her nose, could remember exactly what kissing her felt like. He didn't move. Neither did she. Good night, Claire. Good night, Dante. He left, and she closed the door behind him, and Dante walked to his car feeling both fuller and more empty than he had in years. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Dante showed up every Wednesday at 6 p.m., spent the evening with Eli, left at bedtime. Every other weekend, Eli stayed at the estate, a revelation for the 7-year-old who explored every room like an adventure, turned the pool house into a fort, and declared the home theater better than actual movies. Dante learned patience he'd never known he possessed, learned to help with homework without just giving answers, learned to negotiate bedtimes and vegetable consumption and screen time with the diplomatic skills he'd once reserved for million-dollar deals. He also learned to coordinate with Claire, to respect her methods even when they differed from his instincts, to ask permission instead of assuming authority. It was humbling and difficult and absolutely essential. His mother met Eli on a Sunday afternoon, and Dante watched Rosa fall completely in love with her grandson within approximately 30 seconds. She taught Eli to make her famous lasagna, told him stories about Dante as a boy, snuck him extra cookies when she thought no one was looking. He's perfect, Rosa told Dante in the kitchen while Eli played in the other room. Smart like his mother, stubborn like you. That's a dangerous combination. Tell me about it. You're doing good, baby. Being the father he needs. I'm proud of you. The words meant more than Dante expected. His whole life he'd sought his parents' approval through business success and family legacy. But this, being a good father, mattered more than any empire. Maggie remained cautiously supportive, watching Dante with eyes that saw everything. At Sunday dinners, which had become tradition, she'd ask pointed questions about his intentions, his schedule, his commitment level. Dante answered honestly every time, knowing he was being tested and that passing mattered. 2 months in, Eli had a nightmare. Claire called Dante at 2 a.m., voice tight with stress. He's asking for you, won't settle down. I tried everything, but he keeps saying he wants his dad. Dante was in the car within 5 minutes, still in pajama pants and a t-shirt, driving through empty streets to get to Bennett Heights. He found Eli on the couch, wrapped in blankets, Claire sitting next to him looking exhausted and worried. Hey, buddy, Dante said, sitting on Eli's other side. What's wrong? Bad dream. There were dinosaurs, but they were mean and they were chasing Mom and you weren't there to help. And Eli's voice broke into crying. Dante pulled him close. It's okay. It was just a dream. Your mom's safe. You're safe. I'm here now. But you weren't there. In the dream, you weren't there, and I was scared. Sometimes in dreams, things get mixed up and scary. But in real life, I'm here. I'm always going to be here when you need me. Promise? I promise. Eli cried against Dante's shoulder while Claire watched with an expression that was equal parts grateful and grieving. After a while, Eli's breathing evened out. He was asleep before Dante could suggest moving him to bed. I'll carry him, Dante whispered. He lifted Eli carefully and took him to his room, tucked him in exactly the way Eli liked, positioned the T-Rex just right. When he returned to the living room, Claire was making tea. Thank you for coming, she said. He wouldn't settle. I was about to call my mom. You don't have to thank me. He's my son. This is what fathers do. Not all fathers. Some would have told me to handle it myself. She handed him a mug. But you drove across town at 2 a.m. in your pajamas because a 7-year-old had a bad dream. Of course I did. That's not of course, Dante. That's exceptional. That's... Her voice caught. That's the kind of father I always hoped he'd have, but never thought was possible. They stood in the kitchen drinking tea at 2:30 a.m., and something shifted between them. Something subtle but significant, like a door opening just slightly. Do you want to stay? Claire asked quietly. It's late. The drive home is long. You could sleep on the couch. It wasn't an invitation to more, just practical consideration. But Dante heard the trust underneath it, the willingness to have him in her space overnight, the acknowledgement that he'd proven himself steady enough for this. If you're sure. I'm sure. She brought him a pillow and blanket, said goodnight, disappeared into her bedroom. Dante lay on the too small couch in the too quiet house and listened to the sounds of his family sleeping. His family. The word still felt impossible. He woke to Eli standing next to the couch, staring at him with wide eyes. You stayed. You had a nightmare. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm okay now. Eli climbed onto the couch, curling against Dante like it was the most natural thing in the world. Thanks for coming, Dad. Dante wrapped an arm around his son and felt something in his chest finally settle into place. This was where he belonged. Not in a mansion alone, but on a too small couch with his son tucked against him and his ex-wife making coffee in the next room. This was home. 3 months after Christmas, the legal paperwork came through. Eli's birth certificate now listed Dante Moretti as father. Custody arrangements were official. Child support established. Everything legal and clear and permanent. Dante stared at the document with his name next to Claire's, their son's name below, and felt the weight of 7 years finally lift. That evening, he brought champagne, the good stuff, because some moments deserved celebration. Claire raised an eyebrow when she saw it. What are we celebrating? Everything. Eli's officially mine on paper now. We're officially co-parents. We made it 3 months without killing each other. She laughed. The bar is low, but we cleared it. They toasted with Eli, who had sparkling cider and declared it fancy grape juice. After dinner, after bedtime, Claire and Dante sat on the porch, despite the cold, drinking champagne and watching snow fall on the quiet street. I need to tell you something, Claire said. Dante's stomach tightened. Okay. I've been thinking about what you asked, about whether there's a chance for us, for more than co-parenting. Claire, you don't have to. Let me finish. She took a breath. I don't know if we can be what we were. I don't even know if I want that. But I think maybe we could be something different, something better. If we're both willing to work for it. Dante's heart stopped. Are you saying? I'm saying let's try, slowly, carefully, with Eli's well-being as the absolute priority. No promises, no expectations, just trying. Seeing if the people we are now can build something the people we were couldn't. I can do slow and careful. Can you? Because Dante, I mean glacially slow. Months of dating before anything physical. Therapy, both individual and couples. Complete transparency. And the second I feel like I'm losing myself again, the second this becomes about control instead of partnership, we stop. Completely. And go back to just co-parenting. I understand, and I agree to all of it. He set down his champagne. I'm not the same man, Claire. I won't make the same mistakes. I'm not the same woman either. I won't accept being controlled. I won't lose myself for anyone, even someone I love." Her voice softened. "But I think maybe we could be good together, the new versions of us. If we're both willing to try." "I'm willing." "Then we try." She held out her hand. "Partners. Equal partners. In parenting and whatever else we build." Dante took her hand, and for the first time in 7 years, touching Claire felt like possibility instead of regret. They sat on the porch holding hands until the cold drove them inside. At the door, Dante turned to leave, but Claire caught his arm. "Stay," she said. "On the couch again. It's late." So he stayed. And in the morning, Eli found both his parents in the kitchen making breakfast together, and his face lit up like Christmas. "Are you guys friends again?" Claire and Dante exchanged a look. "We're working on it," Claire said. "But yes, we're friends." "Good. Friends is good." Eli climbed into his chair. "Can we have pancakes? Dad makes them flat, but Mom makes them fluffy. Maybe together you can make them perfect." They made pancakes together, a messy, laughing process that resulted in pancakes that were neither perfectly flat nor perfectly fluffy, but somehow exactly right. They ate as a family, Eli narrating his dreams from the night before, Claire and Dante stealing glances at each other when they thought Eli wasn't looking. This was what healing looked like. Not dramatic or cinematic, but small and domestic, and built from pancakes and patience and the willingness to try again. 6 months later, Dante sold his estate. The mansion that had been his pride, his fortress, his monument to success went to a tech executive who wanted to impress business partners. Dante took the money and bought a house in Bennett Heights. Nothing fancy, just a regular 3-bedroom 2 streets over from Claire's place, close enough that Eli could walk between houses. Close enough that co-parenting meant actual proximity instead of cross-town drives. Eli helped him pick paint colors for his room at Dad's house. They built bookshelves together, hung the solar system from the ceiling, created a space that was unmistakably Eli's. Claire came to the housewarming with her mother, both of them bringing food and decorations and warmth. They weren't living together, weren't even officially a couple yet, still moving glacially through the careful rebuilding Claire insisted on. But they were building something steady and real and chosen rather than assumed. One evening in late summer, Dante found Claire on her porch while Eli played with Marcus in the yard. She was reading, glasses perched on her nose, hair pulled back. She looked up when his shadow fell across her book. Hey yourself." He sat next to her. "I brought you something." "Dante, we talked about this. No expensive gifts." "It's not expensive." He handed her a folded piece of paper. "It's a drawing. Eli made it at my house, said I should give it to you." Claire unfolded the paper. It showed their 3 stick figures again, but this time there were 2 houses drawn side by side. Lines connected the houses, and in crayon letters across the top, Eli had written, "My family is close even when we're apart." Her eyes filled with tears. "He wrote this himself?" "Sounded it out. Made me check the spelling." Dante's voice was soft. "He knows we're not all living in one house. But he also knows we're still a family. That distance doesn't change that. He's smart. He gets that from you." Claire set the drawing carefully aside and looked at Dante. Really looked at him. At the man who'd shown up on her porch 8 months ago and had kept showing up every day since. Who'd learned patience and presence and partnership. Who'd become the father Eli deserved and the partner she'd needed him to be. "I love you," she said quietly. "I didn't want to. Tried not to. But I do." Dante's breath caught. "Claire, I'm not saying we should rush anything. We're still doing this slowly, still being careful. But I wanted you to know that the glacially slow process is working, that I'm falling for you again, or maybe falling for you for the first time properly, as the person you actually are instead of who I thought you were. I love you too. Have loved you this whole time, through the divorce and the years apart, and every moment since I knocked on your door and saw our son." He took her hand. "I'm in no rush, Claire. We have time. We have all the time we need." She leaned against him, and they sat watching Eli play, watching the sun set over their neighborhood, watching the life they were building unfold in small, perfect moments. 2 years after Christmas, Dante asked Eli's permission before he asked Claire to marry him. They were building another fort, this one in Dante's backyard, when Dante brought it up. "Can I ask you something important?" Eli looked up from the blanket he was arranging. Sure. How would you feel if I asked your mom to marry me? Eli's face went serious. Do you love her? Very much. Does she love you? I think so. I hope so. Will you make her sad again? I'm going to do everything in my power not to, but if I mess up, I'll apologize and do better. That's what partners do. Eli thought about this for a long time. Then he asked, if you marry Mom, does that mean we all live in one house? Only if your mom wants that, and only if you want that. We'd all decide together. I want that. It's weird having two houses. I always forget my homework at the wrong one. He paused. And I like when we're all together, for breakfast and dinner and just regular stuff. Me too, buddy. Then you should ask her, but do it nice, not boring. Mom likes when people try hard for her. How should I do it? Eli's eyes lit up with ideas. Together, they planned. Not a dramatic public proposal or an expensive restaurant scene. Something small and meaningful and theirs. On a Saturday in December, exactly 2 years after Dante first knocked on Claire's door, he brought her back to that door. Eli was at Maggie's for the evening, a conspiracy of grandmothers who knew what was happening. The crooked reindeer stood in the yard, its antlers still straight from the fix Dante had made 2 years earlier. Why are we standing on my porch? Claire asked, confused. Because this is where it started, where I saw Eli for the first time, where you gave me the first of about 1,000 second chances, where our family began. Claire's eyes widened as Dante knelt on the porch where he'd stood terrified and hopeful 2 years ago. Claire Hayes, you are the strongest, smartest, most patient person I've ever known. You built a beautiful life for our son when I wasn't there to help. You gave me chances I didn't deserve. You taught me the difference between protection and possession, between love and control, between what I wanted and what was actually best. His voice shook slightly. I'm not asking you to go back to what we were. I'm asking if we can move forward into something new, something equal and chosen and built on who we are now instead of who we were. Will you marry me? He pulled out a ring, not the expensive diamond he'd given her the first time, but a simple band with a small stone she'd once mentioned liking in a shop window, a detail he'd remembered and stored away. Claire's hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Eli knows, Dante added. He gave permission, said I should do it nice because you like when people try hard for you. So this is me trying hard, Claire. This is me showing up on the porch where everything changed and asking you to take another chance on me. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes, yes, Dante. I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was 2 years and 7 years and forever's worth of everything they'd lost and found and built together. When they pulled apart, Claire was laughing through her tears. Eli helped plan this, didn't he? Every detail. He said it had to be here, on the porch, where everything started. He's right. That kid is always right. It's annoying. They stood on the porch holding each other while snow began to fall, just like it had 2 years ago when Dante had stood here alone and afraid and desperate. We're doing this different, Claire said. Small wedding, just family. No expensive production. Whatever you want. And we're keeping both houses for now, transitioning Eli slowly, making sure this works before we combine everything. Whatever you want. And therapy. We're keeping up therapy, both of us. Even when things are good. Especially when things are good, Dante agreed. I'm not letting us fall back into old patterns. You promise? I promise. Equal partners. Always. Your voice matters as much as mine. Your choices are yours to make. I'm here to support you, not control you. Claire kissed him again. Then let's go tell our son. They picked up Eli from Maggie's, who took one look at Claire's face and burst into happy tears. Eli was more contained, but his smile was enormous. She said yes? She said yes, Dante confirmed. Good. Now can we get a dog? Because if we're going to be one family in one house eventually, we should have a dog. All good families have dogs. Claire and Dante looked at each other. We'll think about it, they said in unison. Eli groaned. That means no. Grown-ups always say we'll think about it when they mean no. It means we'll actually think about it, Claire said, and discuss it, and make a decision together. That's what families do. They went home, to Claire's house, which would be their house until they figured out the next steps, and celebrated with pizza and sparkling cider. Maggie joined them, and Rosa drove in from across town, and for a few hours the small house was full of everyone who mattered. Later, after everyone left and Eli was asleep, Claire and Dante sat on the couch where he'd slept so many nights over the past 2 years. "This is real," Claire said, looking at the ring on her finger. "We're really doing this." Having second thoughts? No, just amazed. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have believed this was possible, that you could change, that I could trust again, that we could build something better than what we had before. We're not the same people. No, we're better, harder earned, more aware of what we're risking and what we're choosing. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you knocked on my door that Christmas Eve, even though I was terrified, even though I wanted to slam the door in your face. I'm glad you didn't. Glad you gave me a chance. Glad Eli gave me a chance." Dante kissed the top of her head. "Glad we figured out how to be what each other needed." They sat in comfortable silence, planning a future that looked nothing like the past, but everything like home. 18 months later, they married in Maggie's backyard on a perfect June afternoon. Eli was the ring bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness. Rosa cried through the entire ceremony. Maggie gave a speech about second chances and stubborn people who figure things out eventually. Marcus caught the bouquet and declared girls had cooties, which made everyone laugh. The ceremony was simple. The vows were honest. Claire promised to trust Dante with her heart again and to speak up when things felt wrong. Dante promised to listen, to choose partnership over control, to love her as an equal rather than a possession. Eli stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, the three of them bound together officially and irrevocably. Afterward, at the small reception, Dante found himself watching his family, his mother dancing with Eli, Claire laughing with Maggie, Marcus stealing cookies from the dessert table. This messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. Claire appeared at his side. "You okay?" "More than okay. Happiest I've ever been." "Even happier than when you built your empire and had all that power and control?" "That wasn't happiness. That was just noise filling the silence." He pulled her close. "This is happiness. You, Eli. Family dinners and fixed reindeer and pancake negotiations. This is what I was missing." "Good answer." She kissed him softly. "Come dance with your wife." "Your wife? I like the sound of that." "Me too, though it still feels weird, like we're trying on old clothes that fit different now." "Better?" "Different. Not worse. Not better. Just ours. Actually ours this time, instead of something we thought we were supposed to want." They danced, and Eli cut in halfway through, demanding to dance with both of them. So they created a circle, the three of them, moving to music in Maggie's backyard while the sun set and the future spread out before them, full of possibility and choice, and the kind of love that was built rather than assumed. That night, after the reception, after Eli fell asleep in the car on the drive home, after they'd carried him to bed in the house they'd finally combined into one, Claire and Dante stood in their bedroom, their actual shared bedroom, no more separate houses or careful distance. "We did it," Claire said. "We actually made it work. We're still making it work, every day. That's the point." "Are you scared?" "Terrified. What if I mess up? What if I fall back into old patterns? Then I'll tell you, and you'll listen, and we'll fix it together." She took his hands. "That's what partners do. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be honest and willing to try." "I can do honest and willing." "I know. You've been proving it for 2.5 years." They stood together in the quiet of their home, their son sleeping down the hall, their life stretching forward full of ordinary days and small moments, and the profound gift of chosen love. Outside, snow began to fall, early for June, unexpected and perfect. Through the window, Dante could see the street where this had all begun, where he'd driven terrified on Christmas Eve, where he'd knocked on a door and found everything he'd been missing. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance. For letting me prove I could change. For trusting me with Eli. With you. With this." Claire smiled. "Thank you for being worth the risk." They turned off the lights and went to bed together for the first time as husband and wife, as partners, as the people they'd become instead of the people they'd been. And in his room down the hall, Eli slept peacefully, his drawing of 3 stick figures taped to his wall, his family finally whole and together and exactly where they belonged. The thing that changed everything wasn't the secret child or the Christmas encounter or the dramatic revelations. It was simpler than that. It was a man learning to let go of control, a woman learning to trust again, a child bringing them together through the simple act of being loved and loving back. It was pancakes and fixed faucets and ordinary Tuesdays. It was showing up and staying steady and proving that people can change when the stakes are high enough and the love is real enough. It was family, not perfect, not easy, but absolutely completely real. And that was enough. That was everything.